On a dead night, Vincent hears some sounds in his forest, and the noises are no other than the noises of a baby. He wonders what a baby is doing in his forest, and he claims some rat must have snuck into his forest. He stands up to check out what is happening, saying that if the rats are there to rob his house, then they are pretty unlucky because, unfortunately for them, they have entered the hunter's hut of all places to rob. He takes an axe with him and goes outside his house to check what is happening. He is more surprised because he has set several traps by his house to stop such intruders, and he says that due to the fact that these thieves face dodged all the traps he set around and they could even hide their presence from him, he is very sure he isn't an average thief. He is also sure that no matter how much the thief tries, he can't trick his ears. In anger, he threatens to finish whosoever he sees at that place in a flash. He opens the door to his stable, and he can't find anyone. He is so disappointed, and he wonders why he keeps hearing sounds. He recalls that ever since they were told that they couldn't have a child, he has been hearing such phantom sounds. He keeps looking around the stable to see what is making such noise, and he sees something that shocks him. It is a baby. The baby is wrapped with a cloth and kept in a horse stables. He screams, "What is this?" He carries the baby and puts him by his ears to see if the baby is still breathing, and indeed, he can hear the baby's breath. He keeps holding him until his wife, Alina, enters in her sleeping nature and asks him what is wrong with him and why he woke her up with his noises. Vincent asks Alina if he woke her up, and she opens her eyes clearly and sees that he is holding a baby. She walks closer to him, asking him why he is holding a baby and where he found one. He doesn't know exactly how to explain the scene to her. After stuttering for seconds, he eventually tells her that he thinks the baby is their baby. Just as he mentions that statement, something magical happens. The baby opens his eyes, and he waves his hand at them. A sudden wind blows in and thereby gathering the clouds. Soon after that, the rain starts pouring from the cloud. That night, the dry land becomes lush, and the villagers sing songs of happiness. The cloud is so thick that the joy soon becomes evil, but guess what? This baby also protects the village from dangers that threaten it, and with his mystical powers, peace comes into the village. The people are no longer thirsty or hungry, and he keeps researching for the people of that village. As time goes on, the people consider his ability to be magical, and they call him a mage. The young boy, who is eventually named Arian Shiren, grows fast and beautifully, and now he is at the age of 12. His father, Vincent, is now 40 years old, and they play and work together. On that day, after Vincent finishes with his wood chopping, he calls out for Shiren, and he carries him up happily. He tells Shiren that he is done with his duty and they should go home to eat. Before leaving, Shiren asks Vincent how someone uses magic. However, Vincent doesn't even know what magic is. He wonders if that is the kind of book he has gotten for Shiren to read. Since Vincent doesn't have a very detailed information about magic, he tells Shiren that there is nothing much to magic and that if a man can take down a bear with a single arrow or if he can fall trees with a single axe swing, then that is magic. As they walk home, some young villagers playing ball see them, and they also see that Shiren is with a book. They claim that the young boy never stops reading books, even if you ask him to play. They wonder what is in the book Shiren is holding and if he can actually read that big book or if he is just using it as a disguise. They gossip about Shiren, claiming that he looks so scrawny and he looks nothing like Vincent. It's at that point that one of the boys reveals that he heard from his mother that Shiren was picked up from somewhere and claims that maybe the boy was abandoned because he was weird. Vincent hears their words and gets furious, wondering why they will say such about his innocent boy. He looks at his boy, who is happy about the knowledge he has gained about magic, and tells Shiren that since he helped him out at work that day, they should go to the city together the following day and buy him his favorite fruit. Shiren is excited, however, Vincent isn't. He feels he is lacking as a father and says that no matter what people say about Shiren, the boy is his son, and he will always be his son. The thoughts in Shiren's mind are so much different from that in his father's mind. All the burden in his mind is how to know more about magic. The following day, they arrive at the city in the countryside of Thormia Kingdom, the city of Krias. Shiren is excited to be in the city. He watches people eat and buy the things they need, and Vincent tells him to way to the store of Martin's grandpa so he can go about his business. Before Vincent drops Shiren there, he warns him that he can't go into a shady alleyway or run into Noble. Although he knows his son has never been disobedient before, he just feels the need to say that. Shiren reassures him that he will do as he has commanded. He goes to Martin's grandpa's store, and he helps out the old man in his duty. The man sees that Shiren can write, and he is so shocked. He tells Shiren that he doesn't have to help him out with any work, But Cheyenne insists that he wants to do something and Grandpa doesn't have to worry. Grandpa is so shocked at the boy's level of intelligence. He claims that his own Martin is just a city troublemaker and Cheyenne is so calm. Cheyenne remembers his questions about magic, and he asks Grandpa. Grandpa knows that the interest pipeline of a child is within dragon, hero, mage, and bow. Grandpa admits that he doesn't know much about magic but points to a library in front of the shop, telling Cheyenne that there are a lot of books about magic there. Grandpa tells him he can go there and check the books, but he should return to the store early. Upon hearing this, Cheyenne runs to the store happily. Grandpa takes the book Cheyenne was reading earlier, thinking it is the fable book that he read when he was also a child. But he sees some drawings about how to invoke magic, and he wonders if that is what Cheyenne was talking about. Cheyenne gets into the bookstore and attempts to take a book, but the attendant stops him, claiming the books aren't for peasants and she can't have him dirty the books. The head butler comes for his book while Cheyenne wonders how difficult it is to lay his hands on a book and how his father gets so many books for him despite how expensive they are. He sees a noble man carrying a box of a book. He follows the man and watches him throw the books again. He realizes that is where his father gets the books from, and he also goes to find some. While reading, he sees some noble females and wonders what's the difference between himself and them. He remembers his father's words about bumping into nobles, and on his way, the guards find him and assume he is an orphan or works for bandits. They attempt to arrest him, but he runs away and escapes, leaving his coat. He gathers himself to rethink to the store, but he hears a teaching behind the fence about magic. He wonders if that is the Magic Academy, and he stops to eavesdrop. He hears the teacher asking what is the most important thing in learning magic. He claims the answer is knowledge and money because you must buy a lot of stuff. The teacher says the answers the students are giving are wrong, and the answer is insight. He explains that 1 + 1 is 2, but there was a time when people didn't know it was 2, and they tried to prove it. That is insight. Magic has existed for a long time, and learning it through insight would make it easier. Standing behind the wall, Cheyenne wonders if he will get such an opportunity, too, until he hears the teacher's voice saying that he would like to hear the opinion of the child behind the wall. Cheyenne feels he will regret it if he joins the student, but he eventually climbs the wall to join them. He sits on the fence, reconsidering his decision as he sees the teacher, the headmaster of the Alpheus Magic Academy, Mira Alpheus. He decides to face his fear at once. He walks towards Mira Alpheus, and as he gets nearer, the students see that he isn't dressed well, and they realize that he isn't noble. They begin to scream. They beg their headmaster that he shouldn't allow Cheyenne to come nearer to them because he is a commoner, and not a noble. They scream that he looks dirty, and their uninviting ways make Cheyenne stand by the distance and look at them. Mira Alpheus tells his students that they don't have to worry. He calls Cheyenne and says he should come to him. He asks Cheyenne what exactly he has heard from that class that entices him and makes him stand by the wall to listen to their class. Cheyenne speaks to him in a calm manner, telling him that he wants to see magic. He says he has never seen magic before, but he has read a lot about magic, that he wishes to see it in action, even if it's once. The students laugh at him. They claim there is no way a commoner could have read about magic. I mean, it's not like there is even any way he could access books. He tells them that he has read about magic and he just hasn't seen one before. He tells Mira Alpheus that he would like to see any magic, even if it's the smallest one. Mira Alpheus decides to show him magic that can create wind. Cheyenne and the other students are excited as Mira Alpheus creates a wind that blows the students into the air. As they are flying in the air, the wind ceases and they start falling down. He returns to the ground, and Mira Alpheus and the students laugh at him. He asks him how it is now that he has seen magic. Cheyenne asks which kind of magic it is that, and Mira Alpheus tells him that he will tell him about magic to give an example. But Cheyenne feels Mira Alpheus may feel he wouldn't understand. He tells Mira Alpheus that it doesn't matter if he doesn't understand it, but Mira Alpheus should tell him the truth. The other students feel the way Cheyenne is talking to the headmaster is being disrespectful. They claim he is being rude to the headmaster. They say not even the teachers have the right to talk to the headmaster in such a manner, but Mira Alpheus smiles. He tells Cheyenne that since Cheyenne wants to really know about magic, he will explain it a bit more complicatedly. He says magic is acting out of common sense, and another way to explain magic is that it is a mental operation that explodes the truth of reality, and if that is too difficult, he can explain it in a simpler manner. But Cheyenne says it means magic is an irrational reality, and maybe because of that, it is actually closer to the truth. Both the students and Mira Alpheus are so shocked about the explanation Cheyenne has given to magic. Even Mira Alpheus couldn't imagine that Cheyenne got a grasp of what magic means with his simple explanation. He asks Shiren if that definition is written in the books he has read as well, but Shiren says no. He says he sees similarities between the books and the reality of magic he had just seen. He says many great people's ideas were considered irrational, and they were shunned, but in the next, they were accepted as new information and now the truth. So he feels the truth of life is actually hidden in the irrationalities of life. Mir Alpheus admits that he may be right, which draws Shiren's attention further to learning magic. He asks Mir Alpheus what he should do to be able to learn about magic. Mir Alpheus concludes that Shiren is a brilliant child, and even if it is difficult, Shiren keeps trying to obtain the correct information to research it himself. He wonders if Shiren truly believes he can do magic. However, unfortunately for them, Shiren is a commoner. Mir Alpheus tells Shiren that rather than explaining it, he would prefer to show Shiren how magic is used. He calls one of his students, Shuaman, and tells her to enter the spirit zone. She calls the spirit zone and enters into it. Then Mir Alpheus asks her if she can guess how many counts he is holding inside his closer hands. Shuaman guesses that it is 6, and when Mir Alpheus brings out the coin, they all confirm that the coins are 6. Shiren wonders how that has happened and how she could guess it correctly. Mir Alpheus teaches him that when a magician focuses, their mind will become sensitive enough to sense everything in their surroundings. Outstanding magicians are said to be able to count the number of levels in a tree from a distance. It is the mental condition of extreme sensitivity called the spirit zone. Magicians who enter the zone become aware of the outside world in a supernatural capacity, and they are able to dominate reality in the end. That makes Shiren concludes that he can also do it. He feels if it wasn't that the lady counted the number of coins, and she is being able to feel the entirety of the situation happening in front of her at once, then maybe he or any other person could do it too. Mir Alpheus advises that he tries to practice at a quiet place, and the first thing he needs to do is to sense himself, after which he can erase himself. He tells him that although anyone can do it, but not everyone can do it. When he erases himself, an entirely new world different from what he knows will open to him. Shiren understands that if he can't sense himself, then it will be difficult for him to erase himself. His quick realization of every little thing surprises Mir Alpheus, who asks him if he thinks he can try out what he wants to do there. The reason Mir Alpheus has asked him to try it out is that he knows that if Shiren can't enter the spirit zone, he won't be able to learn magic at all. Shiren tries to sense himself. He wonders what it is himself, and he feels it is his brain. But he says his brain is just an organ. He says the senses and reality he feels cannot exceed the concept of the brain, and it is not defining it, but it is sensing it. Slowly, he tries to erase the things he feels in him. He realizes that it is not his existence that becomes more sensitive, but only his sensitive mind should be left if he wants to enter the zone. The other students watch him as he does all this, and after he recovers, Mir Alpheus asks him what he feels. He says that he can hear sounds, but all the students tell him that if he is just standing still, he will still hear sounds. They laugh at him. Mir Alpheus asks him if that is so. Mir Alpheus concludes in his mind that Shiren can't enter the spirit zone, and that is just as he has expected. He says the things that happen in the spirit zone are in another dimension, and it's the synesthesia. It's the smelling sounds, the tasting of light, and feeling the form of the scenery on your skin. He walks to meet him and tells him he has done well. He says if he keeps practicing in the future, he will be able to hear many more sounds. Mir Alpheus ends the class. He says the special lesson ends there, and all the students should return to school. The students leave with Mir Alpheus, who says it is just regretful, and that Shiren is a talented child. He says that if Shiren was born a noble and he was trained from a young age, then he would have been able to achieve something similar to the other kids he is teaching. He admits that there are a lot of talented children around the world. Shiren leaves the compound and tries to jump out through the wall. As he touches the ground, he reveals that what he had done earlier really worked. While he was practicing the spirit zone earlier, he heard a massive sound. He wondered if the spirit zone they were talking about. It felt like he was torn to pieces and scattered throughout the world. He felt he was the world itself. Thinking about all these realizations, he runs back to where his father has kept him in the first place. He recalls that while in the spirit zone, he couldn't help but shudder at the endless immenseness. Although that moment was just for an instant, but it felt as if he escaped his body and he became infinite. As he keeps running, he mistakenly hits an older man on the road. He falls to the side of the road and turns to apologize to the man. He tells him he is sorry, but the man, who looks violent and troublesome, just asks him who he is and says he is pissing him off. This man immediately grabs his shirt and uses his shirt to drag him up. He asks him if he is out of his mind and says that if he hits someone, isn't it natural that he pays compensation for what he has done? Cheyenne is just a young boy who, indeed, has no money for compensation. All he has to offer this man is his "I am sorry." But it doesn't look like this weird man is ready to take an "I am sorry." The man says him if he thinks his sorry is going to be enough for the damage he has caused, and accuses him that he is part of the wolf gang. The man accuses him that he was sent to kill him and that he is there to kill him. The young girl with red hair walks by. She asks the men what they are doing and if something interesting has happened. They call her Miss Amy and ask what has brought her to that side again and if she is bored. When Cheyenne sees that the men are calling her with a title, he wonders if he could ask her to save him. He assumes that she is a noble but notices that she looks so young. Instead of the man allowing Cheyenne to explain himself, they tell Amy that Cheyenne was trying to kill someone, and they want to teach him a lesson. Cheyenne tries to explain to her that what they have narrated isn't the case. He tells her that he just ran into them by accident and he has no intention to kill anyone. The men refuse to believe him. They scream at him and tell him to stop his bullshit, saying they can't believe his word. The man hits him and he falls. They insist that he has to compensate them for what he has done, so he should bring his mother. They claim his mother is hiding after giving birth to a degenerate bastard like him, and he should bring her out. Angrily, Cheyenne enters the spirit zone. The men don't know what that means. All they notice is that he looks weird, and his eyes have changed. His eyes change into blue, and they ask him if he is mad or on something. Again, the man hits his head, asking him to change his eyes again if he knows he can do it. They keep hitting him all over his body without considering that he is just a young child. Amy eventually interferes. She tells them to stop what they are doing and says if they continue, they may kill the boy. She goes to meet him, asking him if he is okay, and he tries to explain to her that he didn't do anything to the men. Amy tells the men to stop hitting Cheyenne and wonders if they don't have anything more fun to do than hit a boy. The men insist they will beat Cheyenne up and sell him to the village in the south. They tell Amy that the boy is a commoner and there is nothing they should be worried about. Upon hearing that, Cheyenne gets scared and he thinks about his mother and father. Amy thinks about what the men have said, and she reminds them that a slave shouldn't have any flaws. So she tells them that they should confirm if Cheyenne doesn't have any flaws. One of the men asks her if she wants to give the boy a checkup, and they ask Cheyenne to take off his clothes. Amy is embarrassed. She calls the men psychos, wondering what they want to check up on. She corrects them that she just wants to see Cheyenne's face. She wonders why he looks the way he does, and admits that she was going to let him go after she bullies him a little, but she can see his body has changed, and she wonders if he is losing his mind. All the men laugh, and Cheyenne enters the spirit zone again. He controls everything around him, including the animals. He immediately realizes that he has entered the spirit zone. He recalls Mir Althea's words about the wind and how Mir Althea showed him how to create wind. He sees that he can view his memories. On the other hand, the men have been trying to talk to him, but he can't hear them. They scream at him, wondering if he is deaf. The man holds him by his clothes, but it seems like Cheyenne is floating in the air. They assume he is pretending to be dumb. Amy is the first to notice that something is really wrong. She screams at the men and tells them to stop. Suddenly, all the men start floating in the air. Cheyenne returns from the realm as he watches them and sees them fly in the air and fall off. As they fall, they groan and complain about the part of their bodies that is injured. Some injure their hand, others their legs, and they beg him to save them. However, Amy isn't affected by any of that. She stands in front of Cheyenne and calls him out. He gets very scared to even talk to her. Amy's face changes to red as she asks him what the hell he is. She knows he is a commoner, and she can't fathom where he could have learned magic, so she asks him where he learned his magic from. She wonders how a commoner could use wind magic that is so violent. The force of the magic calls a lot of attention. Soon, people start gathering around them, pointing to them and saying they heard a large noise around there. Amy couldn't bear for that attention to be around her. She immediately invokes her wind magic and flies away. Cheyenne looks at her as she does do and wonders what level of magic can make a person fly in a particular direction in the air. He screams at her, asking her how she moved like that. He forgets that he is also a target of the men that are by the side. And the men see the injured men on the floor and point that there are some people knocked out by that side. Cheyenne turns and sees the havoc he has created. He has injured 4 adults, and knowing that he is just a commoner, he knows there is no way anyone who comes there will listen to whatever he says or the excise he will give for such an incident. It's at that point that it becomes dawn on him that he has to run. He immediately begins to run, and the injured men try to call him back, asking him to call someone to help them, but that is the least of his worries. He keeps running and calls for his father. He admits that the world they are in is really cold. It turns out Amy is the daughter of the first-class noble family, the House of Carmes. She returns home in shock that her people were beaten by a little boy. She meets her family head, Carmi Shakura, who wonders why she is home that early. He calls out for her, telling her that she is early and asking her if she skipped class again. She refuses to answer him, so he keeps calling her name. She holds her injured hand, telling him that she has learned everything there was to learn in school already, and it is not fun for her to remain at school when she knows everything they have to teach. Shakura is tired of Amy. He says he wonders when she will get mature and reminds her that even though she is a genius, if she remains as careless as she is going to be blindsided one day. That is the least of her worries that afternoon. Her father notices that she is unusually quiet on that day, and recalls that if it were a normal day, she would have violently replied to him that he doesn't even have a job. She has so many worries, so she calls out for him and asks him if he knows someone that works in a magic academy, and if he can introduce her to the person. Some time later, during the snowy period, Vincent notices that Cheyenne isn't at home, and he calls out for the boy in pain and anger. He walks inside the house looking for Cheyenne, and his wife tells him that Cheyenne went to the logging area to get some wood. She claims that was what Cheyenne told her before leaving home, but Vincent wonders why Cheyenne will decide to go and chop wood even when it is snowing. Something feels odd to Vincent, so he decides to find Cheyenne in the logging area. On his way, he accounts that during the spring, when he took Cheyenne to the city for the first time, he almost lost Cheyenne. And when he eventually found the boy claims he got lost, but the boy returns to him in tears, and he really wishes to know what really happened that day. Indeed, Cheyenne is at the logging area with an axe. He feels very cold, and he keeps coughing, but it doesn't seem like he is ready to stop. The reason behind his worry is that he hasn't been able to use the magic he triggered on that blessed day that he hit those men. It was a magic that he successfully cast unconsciously due to insight, but he doesn't know about the middle part of the magic steps that have been omitted because he has no knowledge of magic at all. However, he wants to do it again. Suddenly, he feels that his body is changing, and he wonders if he can enter the spirit zone again. He grasps for breath as his entire environment changes. He can still see everything around him, and he can feel them. He wonders if he is indeed in the spirit zone and why he can feel everything. Just as Mir Alpheus has said, the touch, the shape, and the smell, he can feel every bit of the tree that is in front of him all at once. He wonders what is happening to him, although he really can't explain what he feels, but everything feels weird to him. He carries his axe to cut the tree, and with one hit, the tree shatters into pieces, and even when he cuts the tree down with a single strike, all that resounds in his mind is that what he is doing can also be said to be magic. Little does he know that his father is behind him, and he is watching him. Vincent is shocked. He can't believe what he is seeing. He opens his mouth largely and says what Cheyenne has just done is thunder strike. A thunder strike is a phenomenon where a tree falls down when struck by targeting the tree's weak spot. Cheyenne bends to cut the tree into pieces. He also knows what he has done is weird. That is the first time he has successfully done that out of the 100 times he has been cutting down trees, and it is just like that day's magic, something that happens just once in a while. He admits that he doesn't need flukes, and he doesn't want something that happens by luck. He needs solid knowledge about magic so he can do what he wishes to do. He decides that every day he will repeat the same process until he can do it without worries. He believes that a chance will come for him one day. 3 years later, Cheyenne keeps up the process of cutting trees so he can get what he wants. Due to his great training, he figures that you don't see the tree's weak point with the eyes. Instead, you feel it with your eyes. That day, he attempts to have another thunder strike, and he succeeds in doing it for about 3 or 4 trees. He is excited that he didn't give up and says that he almost went home that day after doing his meditation. It's been 5 hours that he has been there, and he feels like he has become one with the nature around him. He could feel the shaking of the bushes, the wriggling of the worms, and the sound of the trees absorbing moisture with their roots. Even 5 hours is not enough to savor everything he has experienced that day, because if that is possible, a different world will unfold just like Mir Alpheus has told him. He thinks of the statement "a different world" and admits that the statement is an apt description of what magic means. After he has achieved all he wants to achieve that day, he decides to start going home. On his way, he sees some white horses and a carriage following the horses. It looks like a fancy carriage and that can only be used by nobles, so he wonders if they have guests. He returns home and opens the door to announce his presence. He sees that his parents have visitors, and they are looking so sad. Vincent comments in such a way that it feels like Cheyenne has returned too early, and he tells Cheyenne to come and greet their visitor. He introduces the visitor as the assistant butler of the House of Ogent, named Timurin. Cheyenne bows to greet Timurin, and to his shock, Timurin says he has come to meet Cheyenne and not his parents. Cheyenne wonders why Timurin is there. He knows the House of Ogent are second-class nobles in the kingdom, and he doesn't know why someone working under the nobles will come looking for him. Timurin says he has to take a look at Shiren. First, he asks Shiren if he knows how to read, and Shiren says he has read a bit here and there since he was little. Timurin turns Shiren to the back and looks all over him. The entire scene gets Shiren uncomfortable, especially with the fact that he doesn't understand what is going on and what they are doing to him. He asks Timurin if he can at least explain what he is doing, and Timurin tells him he has a good reputation. He says Shiren is a woodsman's son, but he knows how to read, and he is also a good kid. Shiren doesn't understand what is happening until Timurin asks him if he has any intention of working for the House of Ogent. Shiren screams. Timurin explains that they are going to be moving books out of the house's great library, and there are almost 10,000 books there in total, with important books amongst the ones that should be collected. He explains that the job will be for 2 years, and the moving of books will be done by other workers, but he wants Shiren to work with him to sort out the books. Upon hearing that he will be working at the library, Shiren is excited because he knows the library of the House of Ogent will be filled with all the knowledge that is important to nobles. Timurin continues that the only person that knows about the arrangement is his family, so if one of those books is leaked or if even the news about the arrangement spreads, he and his family will be killed. He realizes that is the reason his parents are looking worried. Timurin tells them that since their lives are on the line, they will be given plenty of money. It will be an amount that they will never be able to get by just hunting, so it looks like it is worth it that they took great care of their son. Vincent protests. He tells Timurin that he didn't listen to his ridiculous requests because of money. It's because they wanted Shiren to be able to accomplish his dreams. Timurin laughs at Vincent, asking what he is thinking so hard about. He says he should stop dreaming, and there is no way a child of a commoner will have a career. He says if they didn't do it for money, then why else could they have requested that he use their son? Vincent protests that it is because Timurin said Shiren could read books, but Timurin says he said that. But even if he can read, it is impossible for him to completely monitor him. But Vincent is saying he wishes for his son to accomplish his dreams and says Vincent is only lying to his son. Vincent doesn't initially know Shiren could read. He knows his wife, Alina, taught Shiren some words just for fun, but after he turned 6, he started to read books to learn. The boy was good and cute, and he was very clever, so he wonders if the boy has the blood of the noble. He had always regretted taking the child and had felt that if the boy was taken by nobles, he could have gone to school. He tries to control himself from thinking he could give Shiren a better future and feels a child of a woodsman only has to work in the mountain. Indeed, Shiren begins to work on the mountain, but even when he works there, Vincent feels unhappy that he has raised such an intelligent boy to be a woodsman. So when he found out that Timurin needed a commoner to read, he begs Timurin to use his son. The only clause to the request was that Timurin allows Shiren to read some books, so he tells Timurin that he doesn't need any money, and if he knew that Timurin would behave like that, he wouldn't have begged for the job as he did. So he angrily tells Timurin to leave his house. Vincent is angry because Timurin has decided to insult him and his family because he has money, and Timurin doesn't also want to apologize for the ways he has spoken. He says there is nothing more he can do and says that Vincent and his family don't know their place, so he will be leaving. Shiren screams to beg his father. He says he will do the job regardless. Vincent screams at him, asking him to reconsider his decision. Even though Timurin doesn't believe that Shiren will accept to do the work, he asks Shiren if he is really serious about his decision and says he isn't trying to scare him with the death threat and even a small rumor about the work will mean death. Shiren accepts the work. He says he will do it despite the death sentence. He says he will never leak any of the books, and even if something goes wrong, he won't blame Timurin upon hearing that Timurin decides to employ him. He says that he will come back after a week, and even it is also alright if Shiren changes his mind before he comes to recruit him. But he should keep in mind that after he enters the house, he won't be able to leave the house until the work is done. After Timurin leaves, Vincent gets angry at him, asking why he accepted such a job. He says the bastards only need someone to die for them, and it was because he was ignorant that was why he asked them for the work, so Shiren should just refuse, and he will take responsibility. However, Shiren cheerfully appreciates Vincent for getting him the job. He calls it an amazing gift. His father still feels he is intentionally accepting because he doesn't want him to feel bad. He begs Shiren to reject the job and says he doesn't have to worry about anything. They hug each other as he promises Shiren that he can protect him. He reluctantly accepts to let the boy go, and he begs him to go and come back alive, saying he will protect their family so that not even a strand of their hair will be out of place. In his mind, he wonders if he has finally acted properly as a father should do for the first time. The entire family cries because they know it may be their last time together. A week later, Timurin returns, and he brings the non-disclosure form for Vincent to sign. Vincent collects the contract, and when he reads the content, he reluctantly signs it. He watches as his son enters the carriage with Timurin. As the carriage moves, Cheyenne keeps thinking of his final hug from his father. He calls out for his mom and dad and hopes that they shall stay strong till he returns home. He feels the opportunity he has gotten is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, as well as a double-edged sword. He wonders if he can survive for 2 years among those with such powerful authority. They arrive at the kingdom of Thormia. The house of Ogent is located in the Thormia kingdom's city of Kriaz, around the capital of Bashuka. The house of Ogent produced state-certified swordsmen for generations. The predecessor family head was a state-certified grade 3 swordsman, and their present family head, Biskov Ogent, is a grade 4 knight. In short, they are the big shots that command the city's military power. They eventually arrive at the house of Ogent's Broadway. As he gets there, he says wow. But the worker in the carriage assumes he is already scared and tells him that the family members are the real deal. But another worker warns the worker to watch his words if he doesn't want his head to fly. They alight from the carriage and start walking inside the house. It is at this point that the reality begins to sink in for Cheyenne. The family is a second-class noble. They show him the office where the butlers stay, and that is where he will be staying too. Timurin tells him to follow him, and that he will explain his job to him. They open the door to the library, and Cheyenne is wowed by the Great Ogent Library. Timurin tells him that they will be moving the books in that library, and his job is to sort the books. He says he will give Cheyenne a list every week, and he will find and gather up the books in the list. His work is from 9 in the morning to 6 in the evening, and after that time, he is free to do whatever he wants to do. But he can't go outside the house, and he can't enter into the mansion without special orders. He says the butlers will tell Cheyenne the other workers' rules. Seeing the amazing books in the library, Cheyenne admits that the work is worth him putting his life on the line. He asks Timurin when he can start the job, and Timurin tells him he can start the following day. The following day, Cheyenne dresses up and moves to the library with the list provided for him by Timurin. Upon seeing the list, he understands why only one person categorizes the books. It is because the categorizing has to be consistent. For example, if he is categorizing a book titled History of Swordsmanship, whether he will put the book under History or Swordsmanship depends on him. In the process of building the categorizing system, he also learned that all knowledge is connected, and the foundation that connects everything is history. Knowledge has been piling up above the line identified as history, and history is the core of true knowledge, and he needs to build his knowledge of history first. In that library, there are about 10,000 books, and among them, 850 are about history, so if he can read everything within his 2 years contract, he will achieve his dream of becoming a mage. He sees the deputy butler coming, and he quickly closes the book he is reading because he feels he shouldn't show him since he didn't approve of it. Timurin enters and sees that he has done his work for that day. He says Cheyenne is doing a great job, and he is even working overtime. Timurin advises him that they have a long way to go, and he should be sure to keep himself in good condition because the responsibility of categorizing all the books is on him. Timurin attempts to leave, but he suddenly turns back and walks to meet Cheyenne, asking what it is. Cheyenne wonders what Timurin is talking about, whether the fact that he is always reading books when he works overtime has been exposed. It turns out Timurin is concerned about his appearance. He tells him that not only workers visit the library, and the family head and the young masters visit as well, so he shouldn't lower the family's dignity by neglecting his appearance. He also warns Cheyenne to do something with his long hair, and Cheyenne promises to do that. He is comforted that Timurin didn't catch him reading, but he wonders if that is how he will stay on his toes for the next 2 years. He needs to be very careful so they don't nitpick him. However, more than all that, the problem is that reading books is very hard. He wonders how to understand what he is reading and if he just has to memorize it. He decides that since he won't have access to the books forever, he has to understand every line of them. So if he wants to pull it from his memory, he can do that without stress. Unfortunately, every line of the book is hard, so he sleeps off. He sleeps on the book, and Timurin comes to the library and sees him. Timurin calls him a total fool because he has been reading the same book for half a month. He wonders if Cheyenne feels he can get ahead by studying. He says he would ban him from entering the library outside work time if he were digging through practical books, but all Cheyenne is reading is history. He relaxes and says Cheyenne is just a fool with a big dream. 3 months have passed since Cheyenne started working at the library of the House of Ogent. That day he sorts out the books he was asked to sort out, and he sends them to the people packing. He gradually grows accustomed to the classifying job, and he also learns several pieces of information through the male servants. That day, one of the servants of the young master visits the library to borrow a book. Cheyenne confirms that it is the second young master that has sent the servant and complains that they haven't returned the book they borrowed the last fine. And if they have lost the book, it would be awkward. The servant tells Cheyenne that he isn't wrong, but he will keep on asking the young masters for the book. But they are insisting that they will do everything they have to do themselves. He says that the nobles aren't concerned whether a book goes missing or not, and it is they, the butlers, that have to worry. The most shocking fact Cheyenne has learned is that the nobles don't even care if the books were leaked. To be fair, Cheyenne thinks it's because there probably won't be any important books in a library like that. But he also knows they can leak out such a statement. He tells the butler not to talk like that outside since they will all be in danger, and the butler leaves with his desired book. After the butler leaves, Cheyenne gets a grasp of how the life of an Aristotle works. Aristotle can only have a laid-back attitude if he knows he has the loyalty of his commoners. It's the commoners that risk their lives for things the nobles won't even remember. In the process of trying to prevent the tiniest of mistakes, the servants become cold and heartless. He concludes that it doesn't matter if the nobles care or not, but for the commoner to live a quiet life, he has to do his duty. Suddenly, Cheyenne sees someone running into the library. The boy asks if he could rest on a day like that. And when Cheyenne looks at the boy with his blue hair, he recognizes him as the youngest master of the house of Ogent, Ryan Ogent. His master screams behind him, telling him that if he catches him, he will make him run 100 laps. Ryan decides to hide in the library and tells Cheyenne not to tell his master that he is there. Ryan hides under the table, and his master enters the library screaming his name and saying he knows he is there. The instructor enters and asks Cheyenne if Ryan is there. Cheyenne asks who the man is, and the man says he is a swordsman instructor and he is Ryan's private instructor. He says Cheyenne should better reply truthfully if he doesn't want to get beaten up. Left with no other choice, Cheyenne points to the table that Ryan has hidden. He tells the instructor that Ryan is under the table. Ryan gets angry at him. He threatens Cheyenne and asks him if he wants to die. He comes out of his hiding place and tries to persuade his master, saying that it is a misunderstanding. The man drags him out and asks him what he means by a misunderstanding. The instructor says that Ryan deserves to be mentally trained again, and he drags Ryan by his legs while struggling for his life. Ryan threatens Cheyenne that he will pay for what he has done to him. It's not like Cheyenne wanted to betray Ryan, but from what he has learned, he knows the instructor has authority over the family head, so he has no other choice. Later, he hears the rumor that Ryan was taken by the instructor to the mountain for a month. The first book Cheyenne took to read took him about 20 days to complete. However, after he fully understood the book, he read 82 books within 4 months. Just as he expected. Only the beginning of a thing is hard, and none of the other books he read contained a completely new information. If he is to lay the foundation with 200 books, then the remaining 650 books won't be difficult for him to take in. As he reads the history books, he begins to have doubts. He wonders if studying history is his right choice. But after studying well, he realizes that he has made the right decision. It's the scholars that invent history, which the mages materialize into theory, so reading history is the best choice. He decides that a mage and a scholar are the same, but not all scholars are mages because they can't enter the sensitive state of mind, which is the spirit zone. Since he can enter the spirit zone, if he adds knowledge to it, he will become the backbone of knowledge. That way, he can become a real mage. Unfortunately for him, Ryan returns from his punishment and barges into the library. He tells Cheyenne that he went through hell, waiting for the day he will have his revenge against Cheyenne. He tells Cheyenne that he knows how much trouble he went through. He climbed the cliff several times, and every time he felt like he would die, he revives himself thinking about the day he will execute his revenge against Cheyenne. Cheyenne realizes the situation is worse than he has thought, and Ryan has planned his revenge to the peak. Ryan complains that he asked Cheyenne for a favor, and he trusted Cheyenne, but Cheyenne snitched on him. He says that when he sees cowards like Cheyenne, he feels really sick. However, Cheyenne argues that he didn't rat on Ryan. He only spoke the truth, but Ryan says if he didn't intend to help him, he could have told him initially that he wouldn't help him. In Cheyenne's mind, he feels it is easy for people who are strong to listen to the logic that suits them. Without any fear on his face, Cheyenne asks Roan what he wants him to do. Ryan is shocked. He can see that Cheyenne is a new butler, but he doesn't understand Cheyenne's calm attitude. He says Shiren looks down on him just like everyone looks down on him, so he will show Shiren who he is. He commands Shiren to follow him, and when they reach their destination, he sees that Ryan has taken him to the training ground. He wonders if Ryan intends to hit him until he feels better. He decides that he will just take the hits. To his shock, Ryan throws him a wooden sword and says they are going to have a duel. He claims he isn't as cowardly as Shiren, and he won't just hit him but to pay the price of looking down on him. He is going to take strikes from his sword. Shiren can't even figure out what he has done that was so cowardly, but Ryan reminds him that as a servant of the House of Ojent, he has to protect the house. But Shiren sold him out to his master because he was afraid of getting beaten. Ryan's eyes change as he says that he is in trouble and he is sold out. He admits that he is always ignored by his family, but he won't be treated the same way by a guy like Shiren. He sets out to fight, and Shiren sees that his eyes have changed to that of an Ojent. The wooden swords are sturdy, and if Shiren breaks a bone, he has to return home. He keeps thinking of what to do, and he decides that he has 3 shots and he has no choice but to try his luck and survive. He goes for his first hit, and he notices the tremendous level of strength that Ryan has. He does his second hit as Ryan smiles at the way he would injure him. Ryan asks him if he has ever even held a sword before. Shiren knows he has just 1 ace left, so he enters his spirit zone and decides to give it one last chance. At that moment, Ryan sees Shiren's great stance. He sees that it would be hard for him to block the attack. He tries to block it, and it is eventually his turn, but to his shock, Shiren's last attack breaks his wooden sword. Shiren is satisfied that his gamble eventually paid off. Although his wooden sword breaks, too, he is glad he can make an attack. With the first strike he made, he got a feel of things, and with the second strike, he calculated his opponent's timing. And finally, on his third strike, he did what he intended to do. He invoked the thunder strike that he had practiced for over 3 years. Even Ryan can't believe that he isn't a swordsman. He calls out for him, asking him where he learned his swordsmanship from. However, Shiren tells him that the skills he has applied isn't swordsmanship. Instead, it is thunder strike. Ryan doesn't understand what he means, so Shiren explains that his father's workplace was in the mountain. So he also followed his father to the mountain to chop down wood. But his physique was too lacking to chop down trees, so the thunder strike skill was a skill he learned to supplement his lacking physique. He further explains that among the lumberjacks, the skill is called the thunder strike. Ryan still doesn't understand what he means and says he is only spouting bullshits. He can't believe that Shiren learned great skills from chopping down trees. It feels ridiculous because he was trained in swords for 15 years, and he knows the skills that Shiren has applied, and he is sure that isn't a skill you can just learn because you chop wood. He recalls the first time his brother successfully smashed swords and how his master had praised him. How the family head had said his elder brother, Rai, was only 12, and the sword smashing technique was the Ojent's secret technique. Rai's instructor said the second young master, Rai, has greatly surpassed his peers, and there is nothing more he has to teach Rai. That day, Rai has fought with Ryan, who is injured and on the floor. The family head was so happy, and he tells Rai that he had inherited his genius power, and that because of that, they would hold a grand banquet to commemorate that day. That day, Ryan wonders why he couldn't catch up with Rai and why Rai is the only one everyone commends happily. Seeing Shiren use the same technique Ryan has been trying to learn for years, Ryan feels bad again. He screams that he can't accept this, and Shiren, who doesn't understand what could have been the issue, apologizes to Ryan. He says that if he had acted in a bad manner, he would have been very sorry. However, Ryan asks him to shut up, and he takes a metal sword and brings it out. He throws it at Shiren and tells him that since both their weapons were destroyed, the match isn't over. And now that he has found out that Shiren has learned swordsmanship, he will accord the right treatment to Shiren. He tells Shiren that in a month, they will both return to the training field, and they will have the continuation of their duel using real swords. Shiren looks at the sword and confirms that it is a real sword. He concludes that he might really die on that day. He begs Ryan and he tells him to please think his decision over. He insists that he has never learned any swordsmanship in his life, but Ryan tells him that is why he is giving him time to learn before they have the real duel. He claims if Shiren were talented enough to learn swordsmanship while he was chopping wood, then within 1 month, Shiren would do it again. He tells Shiren that he shouldn't even think of running away, and he will make sure he overcomes Shiren at the very least. Shiren returns to his room, trying to think about what exactly has happened to him. He eventually gets a grasp of what is happening. With his stay in the house, he has figured that the House of Ojent has both blue and black hair passed down to their children. The family head, Biscoff Ojent, has black hair and he has 3 sons and a daughter. His eldest son has black hair, and he is a certified grade 6 swordsman. The eldest daughter, who has blue hair, also has incredible talent, but she chooses to follow a path of music than a sword, so she is the palace pianist. The second son is Rai, who is called a genius. He also has black hair. Unlike all his black hair's elder brothers, who have shown great talent, Ryan has blue hair, and even the teacher they dedicated to teaching him evacuated that he has no talent at all. The story is so popular in the house that everyone who works in the mansion knows the story. Upon figuring that out, Cheyenne regrets fighting against Ryan in the first place and wishes he had just taken Ryan's hit than challenging him with the thunder strike. He feels he has scratched the pride of someone who lived his entire life being compared to his siblings. If it weren't for the books he has to read, he would have thought he had no reason to die. If he dies, his parents may suffer too, so he doesn't have the time to think like he is doing. He decides that he must find a great solution. At least, he is going to become a mage, too. He decides to find some books. Since he grew up in the mountain, he has some endurance technique, so if he learns some defensive art, he may be able to survive. He carries the books and promises that he will do all he can to actually survive. Throughout the time left for the duel, Ryan is more consistent in his training. He passionately trains that even his instructor is shocked. His instructor commends him that he has broken his former records and asks him what had happened that made him train that simply. Shockingly, Ryan doesn't even feel what his instructor is talking about as training. He says that he is still standing on his 2 feet, and if it is really training, he should be tired already. He asks his teacher if he doesn't have any harsher training for him, and at that moment, his teacher sees that there is indeed something weird and something has happened to Ryan. But Ryan denies that. His instructor wonders if Ryan wants to compete against Rai again or if Rai has learned a new skill again. He remembers that Rai has already awakened his schema, so it would be absurd for Ryan to compete against him. Since that is what Ryan wants, he decides to give him but says that if Ryan dies, it is not his responsibility. Ryan accepts, and they start the training. The schema is both an imaginary body and a schematic of the human body. Just the same way a mage has the spirit zone, a swordsman has a schema. A schema is a concept taken to the extremes, and masters of the schemas are said to fully understand their bodies, and they can even be involved in their cell moves. It is exactly the opposite of the spirit zone, and while Cheyenne reads about the spirit zone, he learns this, and he wonders if he should try it out. The first thing he has to do is to feel himself, and when he does that, he concludes it is more easier than the spirit zone. But he needs to dig further into his existence, and if he can draw away the veil, he will complete the page 1 of a schema. However, putting efforts into schema isn't sufficient. He wonders if Amy was also a schema user and says that to think she could use the wind to fly away at that age, it is very impressive. After considering the two, he decides it is much better for him to use the spirit zine as a base to learn some swordsmanship. So he decides to start by slicing in the 8 directions. On the other hand, Ryan puts his energy into slicing. 2. He does it so ridiculous that his master has to stop him that his muscles will tear. But he begs that his muscle should tear. He begs that his arms should fall off. He wonders why he cannot have schema. He cries as he does his training. And his teacher interferes to stop him. He says they have done enough training for that day. As Ryan attempts to leave, his teacher stops him asking him what he is thinking about, so he reveals that he feels his arms are killing him. His teacher tells him that he has never written that Ryan has talents in his report. But still, he thinks Ryan is good at doing something else. He asks Ryan if he has ever thought about one thing he can do so well, but Ryan says he doesn't know, but he knows what he can't do well. That day, his instructor tells him the reason he isn't a genius is that he doesn't know what he is good at. He says geniuses know they are geniuses, and they also know what they are good at. That is why a genius' hard work is guaranteed work that achieves what he is good at. What geniuses really fear is hard work to attain something they can't gain, the will to challenge something they aren't good at. And that is what can be called the mortal enemy of geniuses. That statement seems to be the best consolation Ryan has received in his life, but he decides that if it is a talent he doesn't have at the start, he just has to work hard to achieve it. The question remains, what is swordsmanship? And Cheyenne finds the answers in the book he reads. He sees that swordsmanship is the totality of an exercise dynamic with the goal of eliminating life. It contains an extreme level of psychological warfare. While it may seem as if an enemy can attack him in an endless amount of ways, in reality, there are only 8 major ways an attack can happen. For the last 1 month, he had trained himself to cut in 8 directions and also block in 8 directions. And that is all that he needed to win the fight. After his rigorous training, he admits that the path swordsmen have chosen isn't that which is rosy. He says the world of the sword is really infinite, just like the world of magic. After seeing how stressful it looks, he apologizes to his mom and dad, claiming that he may not be able to return home alive. But still, he has no regret because although the path which he has chosen is filled with the crossroad of life and death, he was able to see an amazing world. On the assigned night, he returns to the training pitch to have his duel against Ryan. As he arrives, Ryan unsheathes his swords. Cheyenne sees the atmosphere Ryan eludes, and he wonders if it is possible that Ryan eludes that much power in just a month. When they pick the date when Cheyenne was begging Ryan that he had never learned swordsmanship before, Cheyenne had such a messy form and balance, and Ryan felt he may not have learned swordsmanship. However, Ryan is shocked looking at Cheyenne on this day because Cheyenne is so calm while holding a real sword for the very first time, so he wonders if Cheyenne is really as talented as his brother, Rye. That reaffirms his decision that he has to win that fight. He forges ahead at Cheyenne and brings out his swords. Cheyenne also sees that Ryan has amazing swordsmanship, a swordsmanship skill that is so much different from his own. However, at that moment, he can feel his sword's path. When Ryan almost reaches to him, he sees that Cheyenne is looking at the swords and not him. He calls Cheyenne a punk and wonders if Cheyenne isn't afraid of the sword. Little does he know that the thoughts in Cheyenne's mind are that he can't defeat the fear of death, and that death and the cause of that fear are in the future. He feels the future is merely an illusion that doesn't exist yet, and if one doesn't imagine the next moment, then one can leap off a cliff. He feels leaping off a cliff is simply not a resolve to die, but it is to be swallowed by emotions. Ryan eventually reaches Cheyenne and sets to attack Cheyenne's right side. But Cheyenne finds out before he reaches him, and he blocks the attack. Ryan refuses to give up. He believes that Cheyenne is using cheap tricks and says that even if Cheyenne does that, there are still walls that Cheyenne can't climb by using cheap tricks. Cheyenne also notices that Ryan's sword strikes are heavy and fast. As it goes on, the speed of Ryan's strike starts to exceed the rate at which Cheyenne can sense the swords part with synesthesia. The fight continues, and Cheyenne keeps defending. Ryan gets scared that he is going to lose the fight. He wages a mind-breaking attack, and as Cheyenne tries to defend it, it seems impossible. He slips off, and he also gets hit by the sword. He falls off, and he admits that something is wrong. Ryan feels he is on the winning side, so he smiles at Cheyenne, asking him if he has realized what is happening now. The skill he has used is the Ojin swordsmanship. It is made for training great swords, and there is no way Cheyenne could endure his heavy strikes. That strike hits Cheyenne by his chest, but Ryan is glad because every strike he has used contains his grinding efforts. He threatens that he will crush Cheyenne with all his strength. Despite the fact that Cheyenne is injured, he tells Cheyenne that they should continue with the fight. He swings his sword again to fight Cheyenne, but Cheyenne feels there is something weird. He is considering that if Ryan slashed upwards after he cut his abdomen, his side would have been cut, and the game would have ended, which means that Cheyenne would have died. So he wonders why Ryan is only using attacks with big movements. After looking at Ryan and his skills, he realizes what he is missing, which is the fact that the level of Ryan's knowledge of swordsmanship is way lower than he has expected. Although Ryan is proficient in utilizing skills, his understanding of their usage is swallow, and if that is the case, Cheyenne decides to decrease Ryan's predicted combat capabilities. Trying to do that, he decides to change his plans. He switches to attack, and he starts attacking Ryan. Ryan has expected that Cheyenne will be tired, so seeing Cheyenne attack him makes him very shocked, and he wonders if Cheyenne isn't tired. Cheyenne uses the 8 basic slashes that he has learned against Ryan, and Rain figures that he is using all the basic slashes at once. He tries to defend himself, but he sees it is too hard for him to block Cheyenne's attack. Cheyenne watches how Ryan reacts to his attack. He sees that Ryan's stamina has significantly decreased, and he needs to keep the rhythm to maintain his own stamina. Ryan is disappointed. He is angry that things aren't going as he has planned, and he says everything happening doesn't make sense. He says it can't be happening, and it makes him remember the way his father had always praised his elder brother, Rye, after each of their duels together. His father's laugh as he organizes parties to celebrate Rye and the frown on his face when he watches these scenes. Everything flashes back in his mind. The way Rye will always laugh at him when he loses his fight, and the way he has always felt useless. He isn't about to add that duel to his countless lost battles, and he doesn't want to lose. He screams that he will become the greatest swordsman in the world, and he angrily attacks Cheyenne. His attack was without any plan, and it was tactless. It looks like Ryan is about to give up the fight because the decision to attack in that way isn't one that is sensible. As Cheyenne watches so he can predict the path of the sword and defend it, he sees that it isn't as easy as he thinks it would be. The sword paths are scattered, they are in different numbers, and Cheyenne finds it difficult to read or predict them. He sees that they are in random variables. He tries to defend himself, but he finds it impossible. The entire scene is rough and unpredictable. The sword falls off Ryan's hand, and it falls to the ground. As his sword reaches the ground, he wonders if what has happened to him is really possible. In those final moments, Cheyenne changes his grip in an instant, and he strikes upwards, thereby defending the enraging attack that Ryan is bringing towards him. Ryan can't imagine which type of person Cheyenne is, whether Cheyenne is a genius just like his siblings or what kind of personality and skills Cheyenne has. Cheyenne, on the other hand, grasps for breath. He couldn't have imagined that he would win. He really didn't think that he was going to win that fight, and even now that he has won the fight, his mind is filled with several worries, and the most important of which is the question of what will happen next after the fight. No matter how much Ryan is being underestimated in that house, he is still a noble, and forgetting the fact that the fight between them was an honorable duel, winning a noble isn't something that was going to be profitable. Ryan is still a noble, and he can do anything he wants to Cheyenne. These are all the thoughts in Cheyenne's mind as he thinks of what to do in that situation. He wonders what is going to happen next. He knows that Ryan has been underestimated by anyone. The reason Ryan has asked for that duel in the first place is to prove that there is one person he could at least win. So seeing Cheyenne step on his already defeated pride by defeating him again isn't something Ryan isn't going to take lightly, so Cheyenne is very bothered about what will happen next. With his sword still pointed out while Ryan's sword has fallen off, Ryan stands in front of him and looks at him ridiculously. He tells Cheyenne that he lost the fight, which is visible to every eye, and the issue Cheyenne has is what will happen after that fight. Ryan starts hitting his head. He says that he has lost again, just as he has always lost every of his battle. He tells Cheyenne that Cheyenne won the fight. He says that since he was the one that lost the fight and Cheyenne won, even if Cheyenne decided to kill him, he would have nothing to say. Cheyenne first looks at him without saying anything, hoping in his mind that Ryan is joking with that ridiculous statement he has made. He sees that Ryan is actually serious, so he asks Ryan if he has lost his mind. He asks Ryan if he is joking and asks him if he thinks Cheyenne will be left alive if the family head and the other members of the family hear that he killed his young master. He asks what kind of ridiculous statement Ryan is telling him and says the statement shouldn't be a joke, let alone be serious. However, Ryan doesn't think the same way. He reminds Cheyenne that they both fought with their lives on the line, and he admits his defeat. But Cheyenne corrects him that he was the only one who wanted to bet his life on the fight, but as for him, all he was trying to do was just to survive. He doesn't care about killing Ryan, and he indeed has nothing to gain from doing such. He tells Ryan that the fight was nonsense from the start, and he doesn't know why Ryan will blame him for ratting him out to his instructor when he was the one who was hiding because he didn't want to train. Ryan turns the issue into an argument. He says he wasn't blaming Cheyenne for being caught, and it was because Cheyenne was being petty by ratting him out. He claims it was their first time of meeting, and a normal person should have been a little honorable in that situation and could have protected him. However, Cheyenne explains to him that the situation isn't a matter of being honorable. He asks him if he ever thought about how uncomfortable the situation he had kept him in, and says he was stuck between the son of the family head and his instructor, and he needed to decide about which he did. He claims that if Ryan were an honorable person as he claimed, then he wouldn't have kept him in that kind of ridiculous situation. He asks if he thinks an honorable person would probably face their swordsmanship instructor head-on. The major disagreement they had at the beginning of their encounter was that they had misunderstood each other. Ryan admits that Cheyenne could have been right, and Cheyenne says he thought he was going to die in that fight. Seeing the way Ryan is reacting to him, he is shocked. He recalls that people don't normally give each other heartwarming compliments after a duel. He also wonders where the cold warrior that he was facing during the fight goes because Ryan is looking very calm and collected. He decides to talk, so he asks Ryan what is happening. On the other hand, Ryan is also wondering what kind of person Cheyenne is. He feels he is sure Cheyenne is a genius, just like his brother Rai. But after losing that fight, Cheyenne isn't laughing at him the same way Rai does whenever he loses his fight against Rai. Instead, Cheyenne faced him with all his strength and head-on. He eventually decides to ask for Cheyenne's name. Cheyenne tells him his name, and he also introduces himself to Cheyenne. Cheyenne wonders why his young master is introducing himself with his full name. Ryan stretches out his hands to Cheyenne and asks that they should be friends. After that issue, Cheyenne returns to his work, And one day, Timurin visits the library and announces to Shiren that he has classified about 7,028 books out of 10,453 books in total, and Timurin is shocked that Shiren has almost finished his duty within a year. Shiren takes the statement as a compliment and bows to appreciate Timurin for his compliment. It's been about a year that he has been working at the Great Library. As the number of books he had to classify reduced, he became more efficient. Also, out of the 850 books of history that he wants to read, he has read about 650 of them and only 200 are left. Now, he reads about 3 books in a day, and as soon as possible, he will complete the core of knowledge that he has always dreamt of. During his state, he has also experienced swordsmanship and also understood the essence of fear, and thanks to all that, he feels like the durability of his spirit zone has increased. He remembers when he first arrived at the house and how he thought he was going to die. He admits that even if it were slow at the beginning, as long as he didn't give up, he would reach his goal. As he thinks about all of these, Ryan, who is beside him, checks out the books and says he wonders if his family members have read all the books in the library. Looking at Ryan, Shiren admits that there is none of his achievements in that house that could be compared to making a good friend. He replies to Ryan that the family head and the second oldest young master do visit the library often to read. After getting closer to Ryan, Shiren realizes that Ryan is very affectionate, and he has a cute aspect to him despite his tall height. He says it is just as expected from the youngest of the family. Ryan throws the book away, and Shiren says he really acts like the youngest member of the family. But Ryan shouldn't destroy the book because he is the one who will die. Ryan laughs that there is no way a book will be more important than his life, and even if Shiren burns the library, he will protect Shiren. Shiren jokingly tells him he will like him more if he keeps quiet. He asks Ryan what he is doing there, saying that Ryan should be training. Ryan claims he did his basic training, and he told his master that he wanted to read, so Shiren advises that he starts reading. But he claims he is bored. It is actually not like Ryan became worse after the fight. The young boy is like a fire, and when a fire starts blazing, it can't be stopped. As long as there is an opportunity, he will fire up again. They start to read, and Ryan asks Shiren if he really needs to read that much number of books just because he wants to become a magician. He says reading 850 books is ridiculous, but Shiren tells him that he is lagging behind because he didn't read at all before he came there, and he has read over 600 books, and he remembers their contents. Ryan watches him as he reads. Shiren really amazes Ryan because Ryan can't believe a person can read as many books and says that if Shiren continues like that, he will get buried in books. He is the same age as Shiren, but he claims Shiren is more mature than he is. Ryan asks Shiren who he thinks will win if a swordsman and a magician fight. Shiren asks Ryan to read the book to get the answer to his question, but Ryan insists that the book is boring and it has no pictures. They both argue and fight over this because he wants Ryan to read the book. As they argue, the oldest young master enters and says that if a swordsman and a magician fight, the swordsman will win. Shiren stands up and bows to the young master. He wonders if he had been listening to their conversation from the beginning, and it could constitute an offense if they find out that he is speaking to a noble casually. Ryan asks his brother how sure he is that the swordsman will win. He wonders if his brother isn't trying to support the swordsman because he is also a swordsman and tells his brother to argue his position. His brother says that he didn't expect Ryan will take the question that far and says that if Ryan wants to know how sure he is, he has to tell him. He looks in Shiren's direction and asks Shiren what he thinks about the question. Shiren is scared. Normally, he knows the oldest young master is difficult to read, but he finds it much more difficult to read him at that moment because he has something on his mind. He knows he has to give an apt answer that wouldn't annoy the master, so he says that if the swordsman and the magician are on the same level, it will be difficult. He says it would be difficult for the swordsman to defeat the magician if he had entered the spirit zone. But if the swordsmen used their excellent physique to fight before the magician could cast his magic. Before he finishes, Rai tells him he is wrong. He goes closer to intimidate Shiren, and Ryan sees that is how Rai does when he sees anyone that he is bigger than, and he enjoys trampling on them. Rai tells Shiren that it seems like he likes history and asks if he has heard of the armor set of the 5 gods. It's an artifact that disrupts the mage spirit zone. He tells Shiren that he is talking about the ant magic. Naturally, a mage's innate ability is the spirit zone. Fighting a mage inside this area is said to be akin to fighting a shark while in deep waters. However, something can disturb that water to rob the shark of its senses, which is anti-magic. If the spirit zine can't touch it, then magic can't touch it either. If one equips themselves with an artifact holding such an effect, there is no mage that can be able to touch them. However, all these are still theories in the end. In the first place, the so-called anti-magic was a precious skill crested from the mana flowing within a dragon's heart. Also, since it has the qualities of a wave, no matter how much money you invest into it, its effectiveness doesn't increase much. Even the master of the wave equation, Yakra, was only able to exhibit 65% of the effect that the armor set of the 5 gods could have. Due to that, the price is too high. It has an astronomical price, and each piece is worth an entire kingdom yearly budget. Ryan doesn't seem convinced by Rai's answer. If the armor is very scarce and expensive, he asks his brother how he thinks the swordsman is still stronger. Rai tells him that the problem is that the ones who created anti-magic were also mages, which makes Ryan more confused. Why would a mage create an anti-magic that could affect them? Rai answers him that the reason behind them is obvious, and since there is a lot of demand for anti-magic, mages create them because they are a perfect means for making money. Those mages are lined up to ask to be used, so there is no need to buy anti-magic at all. He asks Ryan if he understands what he is talking about. He says mages are just a pathetic class of people who sell the weakness of their kind for money. Though Ryan cautions him that his words are too harsh, but Shiren admits that Rai isn't wrong about mages because that is exactly who they are. Rai couldn't expect to hear that from Shiren, so he asks Shiren to further explain what he means. And Shiren tells them that, indeed, anti-magic is created by mages. It is used to limit magical activities in magic-prohibited areas, and it is also used as a training aid in magic schools. Although anti-magic could be used against mages, it's valued as a fruit of intelligence given up willingly for the good of the world. As a result of that, he feels it is difficult to it that a swordsman is greater than a mage if that is the only factor they are accounting for. Instead of giving up on the conversation, Rai argues that ideals and reality are very different, and no matter what, the truth that a mage cannot win in a fight against a swordsman doesn't change. Seeing how angry Rai was, Shiren thought he was dead, but he was still alive. Rai leaves them in the library, and after he leaves, Ryan commends Shiren and says that Shiren is amazing. He says that is the first time he has seen his brother's face like that, and if Shiren's tongue was a sword, he could be the greatest swordsman in the world. Ryan feels refreshed that he can watch someone go against Rai and win, but Shiren knows Rai wasn't wrong. Ideals and reality are different. 6 months later, Shiren finishes his work, and he remits the entire list to Timurin, who admits that the work has been finished so early. He is, however, glad that the library relocation was pulled 6 months forward, and he is also relieved that the books that have been neglected for 20 years have been cleanly categorized. However, the butler who has reported to Timurin asks him if he doesn't think it is a waste for them to let go of a useful person like Shiren and asks if they can extend the contract for some reason. But Timurin says they are saying nonsense and they should get back to their work. The butler apologizes and leaves. After the butler leaves, Timurin thinks about Shiren. Meanwhile, as Shiren reads his history books, he admits that turning over a book is a simple task, but turning over a book after going through its hundreds of pages is a different thing. It feels like a dream that he is eventually done with his work. At that moment, Ryan barges into the library screaming that he heard Shiren has finished his duty and he is leaving. He asks Shiren if he actually completed it, and Shiren replies affirmatively, saying that there is nothing left for him to read in the library. Ryan runs to hug him, telling him that he is amazing. However, Shiren has a request before he leaves the mansion. He asks Ryan to play inside the mansion before leaving the house. Ryan asks him if he really means that because throughout the months that they have been friends, Shiren has diligently hidden their friendship from any other person. He was sad about that, so he felt it was unexpected that Shiren would ask for something like that. Although regretful, Shiren admits that the only place he met up with Ryan was in the library, so he has never allowed anyone to know they are friends. But he feels since they have lived like that all year long, he has been getting curious about how Ryan lives. Fortunately, Ryan tells him that they can go inside the house now that all his family members are away from home that day, and he is home alone. They leave the library and they get to the mansion. Ryan wants to take him through the front door, but Shiren wonders if it is fine if they go in like that. Ryan reassures him that he doesn't have to worry as his family is away, and they are not coming back until late in the afternoon. Indeed, upon entering the house, Shiren sees that it is quiet and it is only the maids and servants around. He sees a huge door, and he wonders if the door is the door to a room and wonders if one room in that mansion is as big as his entire house. He sees that Ryan's family is really rich and feels Ryan doesn't react like someone who is from that rich home. They eventually get to Ryan's room. His room is the smallest room around the corridor of the house. When they enter the room, Shiren asks Ryan if that place is a training center, but Ryan says it's his room. The room looks like a small lodging that a person goes to after he finishes his training. But that's where Ryan lives. They both play games, but Ryan loses the game again. He refuses to play again, but Cheyenne tries to convince him to play one more round. Ryan refuses to believe that he has been losing in the card game and wonders if Cheyenne has been cheating with the spirit zone. Cheyenne denies that and tells Ryan that he has a habit of moving his card to the outside when he gets an ace. The time for him to bet when it's a pair or no pair is too obvious, so that is how he wins. Ryan can't expect that Cheyenne will figure out something like that easily, and Cheyenne teaches him that observation gives better results when you are not obsessing over a specific thing. When you are not just looking at the opponent's little action but seeing the results of their action, then you can predict their intention. Ryan realizes the most important thing is not focusing on little things but seeing the entire situation as a whole. He wonders if that will help him awaken his schema, and Cheyenne says it could because it helped him enter the spirit zone. Cheyenne walks around and he sees a fiction book. He asks Ryan if he could borrow it. He has gotten tired of reading history books, so seeing fiction for the first time in a while seems amazing. However, he notices that Ryan is asleep already. He keeps wondering when his family will come back, and he sees an instrument on the table and takes it. He hears the sound of the piano and thinks of the family's story. There is only one person who could be playing the piano, and it is the first daughter, the court pianist, and Ryan's sister, Rihanna Ogent. He goes to listen to her sounds, and she notices him and asks him if he likes the sounds of her sonata. He realizes he has been caught, and he tells her the sound is really cool. He wonders what he should do, and she also notices that it is her first time seeing him. She asks if he is a new hire, and he tells her he has worked at the library for about a year. She tells him that she has heard about him before and she heard he is smart. She asks if he has played the piano before. He doesn't want to let his guard down. He knows she is a professional that uses schema when performing. He tells her he doesn't know how to play. He recalls that Ryan said the person with the worst personality in their house was Rihanna. To his shock, Rihanna asks to teach him how to play and asks him to sit. He doesn't know what he is going to do, and he can't even refuse her request without any excuse. She tells him that he doesn't have to be afraid and he can't just come to sit beside her. She claims no one will scold him for doing that because she is the one that permitted it. Well, since she is being insistent, he is in no position to refuse her. Also, he doesn't know when he will get a chance to sit in front of a piano, so he can't reject such an offer. She shows him the do, re, mi, and says the symbols are on the music sheet. So she tells him to try pressing down on the 3 keys at the same time. He does that, and he feels good. She tells him that he is doing well, and he also feels the want to do more, so he first apologizes to her so she won't feel like he is asking for too much and asks her if he could try playing it. She allows him to do that, but he tells her his sounds may not be pleasing to the ears, but she claims that's where everyone starts. She wonders if he knows any more keys apart from the ones she has just taught him, and when he plays it, she really can't believe her ears. He is getting all the keys wrong, but he isn't showing any hesitation while pressing the keys. She wonders if she should stop him from playing them because it is weird that he is getting them perfectly wrong, but he is also getting them perfectly alike. It is as if he is imitating the feel of her performance that he heard. He continues as he does, and later, the keys start to sound more accurate. Rihanna keeps watching him as he does all this. She claims she can't call it a performance, but he has insight that encroaches on the essence. She wonders why he is a butler, especially because he looks like Bauji. He stops playing and apologizes to her for wasting her time. The noises wake Ryan up, and he comes outside to scream at his sister, asking her to take a break if she is at home and that she should stop behaving hysterically. He clears his eyes and sees that Cheyenne is with his sister. He asks him why he is there. Rihanna asks if Ryan and Cheyenne know each other. At that point, Cheyenne feels his friendship with Ryan may get exposed. He feels like he has committed a crime. Before he could answer Rihanna, Ryan says that they are friends. He screams at Ryan, asking him what he is saying. And Ryan tells him that he doesn't have to worry and that although Rihanna may have a rotten personality, she doesn't care about stuff like that. Cheyenne refuses to believe that. He wonders how Ryan could say Rihanna doesn't care. Rihanna finds out his name is Cheyenne and tells him that if Ryan says they are friends, then it is fine. She says that although Ryan may be pathetic, but he takes responsibility for what he says. She asks Cheyenne what he was thinking when he was playing the keys. She asks him if he is just being hysterical. Everything she is saying doesn't make sense to Cheyenne. He sees that all the logic he has learned from the time he was born is all crumbling. Why does Rihanna not care that her brother is friends with a peasant? He refuses to answer her question and asks Ryan why he lied and says that Rihanna is a very kind and nice lady. But Ryan tells him not to be fooled by Rihanna and says she is a witch that knows when she will try to swallow a person as a whole. Rihanna apologizes on her brother's behalf, saying that Ryan is just immature. She says she is glad that Ryan has a friend like Cheyenne and tells him to look after Ryan. Cheyenne tells her he is the one who owes Ryan for that friendship. Rihanna comments that Cheyenne is cute, and Ryan ridiculously tells her that if she thinks Cheyenne is cute, she should keep him and make him her family while they are at it. She asks if he feels so close to Cheyenne that he doesn't care if Cheyenne takes his only big sister, but he tells her she isn't the catch. But Cheyenne is. Rihanna goes to strangle Ryan, saying that he thinks he is shit because she keeps letting everything he does slide. Seeing the siblings fight gets Cheyenne more confused about the nobles. After Rihanna releases Ryan, he asks her why she had come home and says she took a break from the palace not quite long ago. She asks if he doesn't know that Ryan is taking his certification test, and says she has come to take him for the test, and they will depart the following day. Hearing that Ryan is already ripe for certification makes Ryan feels bad. He says that the gap between himself and Ryan is getting too large. The certification test is a standard and order for mages and swordsmen that are recognized not just within the kingdom but in the entire continent. Over 1,000 people take the test every year, but not more than 30 people manage to obtain it at once. And there is also the non-certified license given to mages who graduate from a kingdom-approved special institution like the Alpheus Magic Academy that Cheyenne had visited, and they are allowed to become a grade 10 non-certified mage. Since people gather where there is money and honor, there is a non-ending demand for certification tests, even for the non-certified licenses, so it is amazing that Ryan is taking the test at the age of 18. But that doesn't make Ryan happy. Rihanna leaves them to prepare dinner. She says she has brought seafood from the royal castle, so she has to prepare it herself. Before leaving, she tells Cheyenne that it was nice to meet him and she wants to meet him again. He wonders if he will ever have a chance to see her again because he is leaving the mansion the following day. After she leaves, he asks Ryan if Rihanna has a boyfriend. He looks at him ridiculously, and Cheyenne swallows his question and says that Ryan should forget it. He says he is just curious, but Ryan refuses to hear and runs to tell Rihanna. Cheyenne screams to call him back and claims it was a slip of the tongue because he is sad. Ryan runs towards the balcony and screams at Rihanna, who is walking with her maids, and tells her Cheyenne asks if she has a boyfriend. The maids are shocked, and Cheyenne goes to hold Ryan's mouth. Rihanna smiles and tells the maids not to worry about what they have heard and says the kids are just joking. Unfortunately, the head butler overhears the conversation and asks his other butlers if Ryan has a visitor that day. The butler tells him there is no visitor scheduled to meet Ryan that day. The head butler says the name Cheyenne seems familiar, and also the sound. He eventually remembers who Cheyenne is and tells one of the butlers to tell Timurin to come to his office immediately. The following day, Ryan goes for his training. As he trains, his instructor notices that he got fired up again, and that is the first time since he last got fired up about a year ago. The last time he got fired up, it subsided quickly, but he feels that will change when Ryan goes to the royal palace. He notices the major problem Ryan has is schema. As Ryan keeps training, a servant comes to call him to say that Rihanna asked him to return to the mansion immediately. He assumes it's regarding Ryan and says if it's about Ryan, he isn't interested and they should tell her to do whatever she wants to do. But the servant tells her it is not about that, and Rihanna has said that Cheyenne is in danger and he might die. Ryan can't believe his ears. He wonders what might happen, and he thought Cheyenne was going home that day. The servant tells him that the head butler, Louis, made a report to the family head, and Rihanna says it's because of Cheyenne's relationship with Ryan. Ryan asks for permission from his master to see his father. He tells his master that Cheyenne is his friend and his father found out about it somehow, but he is sure his father will forgive Cheyenne if he puts good words for Cheyenne, so he will come back after he does that. Unfortunately, his master refuses to let him go. On the other hand, Cheyenne stands for judgment, and the butler announces that he will be executed. Just as the news of Cheyenne's execution gets announced, the maids gossip among each other. Some of them say how dared a commoner to try to be friends with a noble. Even Timurin wonders how Cheyenne didn't know about that and says Cheyenne should at least know that much even when he doesn't know so much. Rihanna intervenes. She begs her father that she has something to say, but her father asks her what more should be said about the issue. He says that on the document that the head butler had provided him, there are testimonies of many employees that state how carelessly Cheyenne has treated Ryan. They claim Cheyenne should have no complaints since he has read the contract details, but they ask him again if he has anything to say about his conviction. He tells them that he has one thing to ask. He says that if he is friends with the young master and he is to be executed because of that, so what will happen to the young master? The maids and butlers around wonder what is happening to Cheyenne. They wonder if he can't read the current situation he is in and why he is aggravating the issue that he is facing in the first place. They claim that he should beg for his life, and he doesn't have the time to ask this type of question. Upon hearing Cheyenne's question, Rena realizes that Cheyenne is worried about Ryan. He wonders why he could still think about Ryan when he is in this kind of situation. The family head asks Cheyenne where he has gotten the audacity to ask him that kind of question. He says that Cheyenne is as foolish as a commoner should be. He asks if he thinks something will happen to a noble when they hang out with a commoner, and upon hearing that, Cheyenne reveals that it is true that he is friends with Ryan. He confesses that they have been friends for a year. When the servants hear his words, they give up on his situation because it seems he also doesn't want to live. He concludes his statement by telling the family head that he will always remain friends with Ryan. The family head wonders why he is not scared. He says that Cheyenne has taken the name of the Ogent family lightly. He calls the head butler to deal with Cheyenne quickly, but he shouldn't let any news about the issue get out. As they are about to drag Cheyenne out, Rena enters and begs her father to listen to her. However, the patriarch refuses. He claims that Cheyenne has confessed with his mouth, and there is not much he wants to hear again. And he has made his choice. He says that in the name of the family head, as long as he makes the choice, there will be no going back. Some of the butlers try to ask the head butler if the judgment isn't too much, but some of them are also of the opinion that there is no reason for all of them to die because of just one person. They claim the house is their house, and to protect the house, even if it is small, they must get rid of any conflict. The head butler says they may think the decision is wrong for now, but they will be thankful for that choice later in the future. Ryan eventually enters in anger. He screams that he would not, for any reason, let that happen. For the first time, Rena is so excited to see Ryan. She smiles as she calls his name. Ryan enters and asks who is the person that dares to kill his friend without his permission. When his father says he made the decision, Ryan asks what was Cheyenne's offense. He says his friend didn't do anything other than become his friend, but his father says he doesn't need to commit a mortal sin to deserve death. The circumstances of nobility are so complicated that even Ryan can't imagine them. He says since their family is handling the situation, he is also enjoying the special privileges of being the son of a noble. However, Ryan argues that the privileges don't matter if they are getting rid of his friend. His father says he is immature. He says being friends with a noble means it should be a relationship of equality. He asks if Ryan really thinks that a commoner is his friend, and he asks what's the basis of the friendship as they are in a world where there are many people who try to leech off nobles. Ryan argues that Cheyenne will never do that, but his father asks how he is supposed to trust Ryan's words. He asks Ryan to prove that he is friends with Cheyenne. At that point, Ryan sees he is completely beaten by his father. If he says he can't prove it, then it is over, and all he has to prove is his feelings. So how can he prove his feelings? He can't say things with ease. He knows if he was to be Cheyenne, he would have beaten him. He wonders what Cheyenne would have done in that situation. And he looks at Cheyenne's eyes and sees his eyes have changed. He sees that's the eyes Cheyenne had the day he had that duel, as if he is absorbing everything that is happening. He calls Cheyenne's words that sometimes not focusing on the small stuff yields better results. He tries to see things as a whole the same way Cheyenne would have done if he was the one in that situation. The person right in front of him is his father, a second-class noble, the head of the House of Ogent. He is a black-haired pedigree who is a grade 4 certified official knight. He realizes that the fight isn't between a father and a son. It is a sword fight. 30 minutes before he came there after he heard the news about his friend and his master refused to let him go. He asked his master why he had refused, and his master asked if it was Cheyenne, the boy who worked in the library. He reminds Ryan that the boy is a commoner, but Ryan argues that he thought his master was different and reminded his master of when he told him that if it's someone you can have a conversation with by crossing swords, then the person can be his friend. However, his instructor asks him if he doesn't know what is most important to a noble and if he has forgotten that nobles are meant to get rid of something that threatens the position of the family. He asks if he thought about how Cheyenne feels knowing that he is nothing more than a fly, and after thoughtlessly befriending Cheyenne, does he think he could solve the problem by just arguing? Even though his master is right, Ryan feels he can't just stay there and do nothing because he was the one who requested that Cheyenne should befriend him, and he doesn't want to be a coward. Seeing Ryan's determination, his master admits that Ryan is passionate, honest, and innocent, but he also knows those qualities aren't enough to become a good swordsman. He has high hopes for Ryan, and he decides to keep cheering him on. He gives Ryan his sword and says he will let him go back if he takes the sword with him, but if he isn't prepared for something that minute, then he shouldn't even take a single step out of the mountain. Ryan accepts the sword and tells his teacher that he will never forget the favor he has done for him. Before leaving, his teacher tells him that throwing away a friend is the same as throwing away a part of himself. He realizes that what his father means by proving is by the sword, which is with his life on the line. He laughs and says that he can't believe he was almost beaten by his father. He says he is friends with Cheyenne because he believes they are friends, and his existence of him is proof of that friendship. His father sees he is trying to avoid the issue, and warns him that it isn't a quarrel between a father and a son, and all he cares about is ensuring the house is whole. And if the fall of the house can be avoided by excommunicating his son, he will do just that. The matter is no longer a joke, but Ryan decides to step up. He says if chasing him out of the house will make his friend stay alive, then he will leave the house happily. He bows to his father, but his father screams that he should raise his sword, and if he really thinks Cheyenne is his friend, then he should put his life on the line. Upon hearing his father stating his request, Ryan unsheathes his swords. His father is shocked that Ryan could bring out his swords against him, but Ryan says he isn't pointing the swords at him. He is only showing his faith. His father is shocked, and he asks him how he could be friends with a commoner when he couldn't even get along with nobles like himself, and says it is probably because Ryan can't reach the level of other nobles, and keeping someone lower than him around makes him better. He tells his father that isn't the case. He says Ryan is a friend, and he wants to help Ryan so Ryan can shine brighter elsewhere. Seeing that it is impossible to convince Ryan, the patriarch turns to Cheyenne and accuses him that he makes Ryan believe there could be friendship between a commoner and a noble. But Cheyenne says no. He tells Ryan that he doesn't have to blame himself, and he had the hunch the first time they became friends, and upon being friends with Ryan, he promised himself that if he needed to choose between his life and his friend, he would pick his friend, and even up till that moment, he doesn't regret being Ryan's friend. Ryan also insists that even if he is disowned by his family, he will remain Cheyenne's friend. At that point, the eye of everyone in the hall is filled with tears. No matter what we go through, even if we are immature, we are all humans, and every human needs that kind of friendship. Coincidentally, the family grandfather arrives, and he says the situation is fantastic. He says he didn't expect to see that kind of scene in his later years, and being young is undoubtedly the best. The older man is Thormia's general and a grade 3 swordsman. He is also Ryan's grandfather, the previous family head, Clumfogent. The patriarch says he didn't expect that his father would be back so soon, but grandfather, Clumph, says he returned early because his friend ran away with a young maiden. He says the castle is as noisy as usual and being youth is really fine. However, the patriarch insists that it isn't a good thing, and their family image has fallen to the ground. However, Clump says they shouldn't jump to conclusions as he has been watching the scene from behind for a while, and he can see that everyone there has much to say. So it is better if they hear the opinion of others before they conclude if their family has lost its face or not. They decide to call out everyone as witnesses, and the first witness is Renee. She admits that although she met Cheyenne for the first time yesterday, she noticed he was a smart and talented kid. He completed all his contract requirements, and he was to leave the house that day. Given the circumstances, it is difficult to say that Cheyenne approached Ryan with malicious intentions, so she doesn't believe that he has tarnished their family's reputation. After Rena finishes her witness, Rye enters the witness box for his testimony. He says that he doesn't like Cheyenne. Their father is glad that he has finally seen a supporter, and he knows Rye will be like him. However, Rye says the matter has nothing to do with him. His father asks what he means when he says he doesn't like Cheyenne, and Rye explains that although he doesn't like Cheyenne, but who befriends Ryan has nothing to do with him, so he doesn't care. All he wants is just for them to settle the matter, and he can head to the royal palace. Clump laughs at them all and says there is no place like home. He says that to conclude the issue, they should hear from the ones that must have observed Cheyenne for the longest time. The deputy butler, Timurin. They call the third witness, Timurin, before starting. He knows that his position in that house isn't the one where he can voice out his opinion, but the ones who are there to fulfill the will of their masters. He says that Cheyenne did the work he was commanded to do, and he did it perfectly. In fact, he finished his work 6 months early. The butler is angry that Timurin's words can be in favor of Cheyenne. He wonders what Timurin is doing. The patriarch asks if Timurin knows that Cheyenne and Ryan are friends, and Timurin admits that although he knows that Cheyenne and Ryan hang around a lot, but he didn't know they were friends. But in his opinion, if Cheyenne were a kind of child with malicious intent, he wouldn't have been able to sort out the 10,000 books. The people in support of Cheyenne are glad about the testimony he is getting, and Rihanna is even happy that the atmosphere has shifted. At that point, the only person who is trying to punish Cheyenne is their father. Suddenly, Clump changes his mind and says he can't agree with the way things are going. He says that he understands that they recognize each other as friends, but their friendship ends immediately because if the relationship continues and rumors spread, it may become a weakness for the political opponents to snatch and use against them. Everyone in their family holds a prominent position in the kingdom, and Rye certification is coming up, and they also have other families who depend on them. He says he knows Cheyenne is a great kid and that he will understand. Rihanna and Ryan aren't in support of that decision. Clump tries to explain that there are countless lives at stake. He turns to Cheyenne and tells him he would like to appreciate him for teaching Ryan true friendship. But he begs Cheyenne if he can end the friendship there. To everyone's shock, Cheyenne says he can't end the friendship even though Ryan is shocked. Cheyenne says if he is a hindrance to Ryan, he doesn't mind avoiding him all his years. However, that doesn't mean he will consider him anything other than his friend. Upon hearing that, Ryan feels ashamed of himself. At the point when Clump made his judgment, all he felt was a relief that Cheyenne wasn't going to die. But Cheyenne already knew that abandoning a friend is equivalent to abandoning oneself. He brings out the sword that his master gave him and says he will make his declaration. Everyone in the family is sacred on his behalf. They all know he is naive and thoughtless, and Rihanna even begs that although she doesn't know what he is trying to do but he shouldn't do it. Ryan hits his sword on the floor and declares that at that moment, he will become Cheyenne's sword. He has made a night oath, and his father calls him a fool. The origin of the Knight's Oath goes back to the founding of the Kingdom of Thormia. In the Age of Chaos, small and large countries alike were constantly fighting over territory. Adolf I, who was the strongest of them all, succeeded in unification and established the Kingdom of Thormia. However, the kingdom had to stand against the powerful neighboring countries, and instead of being purged during unification, the defeated king was allowed to govern their people directly, and what was created in the process was the Knight's Oath. In return for pledging to become the single sword to be wielded by their master, they are granted the status of a nobleman. It was the beginning of nobility, and breaking the oath meant the person would become less respected and would be treated worse than a rabid dog. Ryan knows the worth of what he has done, and he tells his family that he can't take it back no matter what. He looks at his master, saying that he made a mess with the sword even though he knows that isn't why he was given the sword. Cheyenne is also not in support of the act, so he asks Ryan what he is doing. Clump asks Ryan if he knows that asking to be Cheyenne's sword can only be real if Cheyenne is qualified. He asks what could make Cheyenne qualified and if he is really that bright or if he only shines bright in the eye of Ryan because Ryan himself doesn't shine. Rain refuses to talk and says a sword doesn't judge but only protects. Everyone around laughs, and Clump says that immature brats have to do at least that much to reach to the top. He says that Ryan is only quite good at words and he is useless with swords, and he feels sorry for Cheyenne for getting a useless sword like Ryan. Clump walks to meet Cheyenne and says everything has been wrapped up, and although Ryan isn't a polished sword but he won't turn his blade at Cheyenne. He asks Cheyenne to take care of his grandson and says since they have become sworn friends, he can't send them off like that, so he tells Timurin to bring Cheyenne's parents. The head butler can't believe his eyes. The table he has prepared for Cheyenne has been turned in his face. After the meeting, Ryan feels so refreshed, but Cheyenne tells him he didn't need to do that much for him, but Ryan says he didn't do it because they are friends. He says he is different from his brother, but Cheyenne has the power to draw people in, and he only chooses to bet his life on that kind of person. Cheyenne feels pressured and tells Ryan that if he wants to protect him, he must get stronger. As they talk, Rihanna enters and asks Ryan if he is really making such a decision. Ryan refuses to hear from Rihanna, but Cheyenne reminds him that Rihanna helped them a lot, so he asks Rihanna to come. She tells them that she has brought information from the opposing faction, which is their father and grandfather. She says they are bloodthirsty, and they are planning a new course of action, so they are planning to enroll Ryan and Cheyenne on the Kaizen Swordsmanship Academy. She reminds Cheyenne that he saw he had an insane talent for swords, but Cheyenne says it is not to that extent. She tells him that he is now a member of the family, and she tells them about his talents to see if they are willing to invest in him. They must be planning on making him succeed for the same of Ryan's future. Ryan, on the other hand, is angry that they dare send him to school without his consent when he thinks he can finally live his life. Rihanna hits his head, asking him if he knows the result of what he has just done. He tells her that Cheyenne can't be a swordsman and he is a mage who has opened his spirit zone already. Upon hearing this, Rihanna can't imagine that her brother has sworn the knight's sword to a mage. She says there should be a limit to how worthless Ryan can be, but Ryan screams that she should get out. They explain to Rihanna that the sword fight that Ryan had against Cheyenne didn't end in Cheyenne's favor because Cheyenne was a swordsman. Instead, he had used synesthesia, which he could sense from his spirit zone, to read Ryan's move and defeat him. She says that was good thinking, and it must have been possible since the densities of his spirit zone are quite high. He doesn't know about that, as she explains to him that from what she has heard in school, the higher the level of a person's concentration, the more solid a spirit zone becomes, and it is even more amazing to be able to concentrate while holding a sword. The compliment makes Cheyenne shy, and seeing his shy face, Rihanna thinks he won't be able to date her. She tells them she would tell her grandpa about Cheyenne's career path, but no matter the career, the condition that he would attend the swordsmanship school will also follow. Ryan wonders what will happen to his teacher if he starts attending the school, and Rihanna tells him that his teacher already knows about it, and he decided to end his contract the day before and said he would say his farewell the next day, which is that day. He brings out that sword and realizes it is his teacher's farewell. A messenger comes to tell them that Cheyenne's family are around, and they are waiting in the reception. And the family head has told Cheyenne that he could go and meet them first if he likes. Rihanna asks what he wants to do, and he excitedly decides to see his parents. He runs through the stairs, and they caution him. He tells the butlers that they can talk to him like before, and it's not like he has become a noble, but they refuse to do so, saying their heads will go flying. He gets to the reception and sees his parents. He hugs them happily and sees that they are thin. He feels that for them to have become thin, they must have had difficulty getting through the nights and were worried that he would return dead. His mother tells him not to worry, that they have been eating and living well. They ask him why he had called them, and his father says he should have returned home if he finished his work. Vincent asks if they are holding him down and refusing to let him come home. He tells them it's not like that, and he has been given a good opportunity. He takes his time to explain everything to them, and they realize that he has permission to stay friends with the son of the family head. He tells his father yes, but his father tells him that he can tell them the truth. He claims there is no way his intelligent son will become that delusional. He asks if they are treating him badly, but Cheyenne insists he is telling his parents the truth. He insists that he has heard that people who go to the noble houses don't return sane, and he doesn't want the same to happen to his son. The family head, Biscoff Ogent, eventually arrives and introduces himself. Ryan comes with him and Rihanna. Vincent screams. He says he doesn't know how such great people will come here to greet them, but Biscoff asks if they haven't heard the story from Cheyenne. Vincent wonders if all the delusions Cheyenne said were true and says there is no way that could happen. They have a meal with the family, and during the meal, Alina and Vincent find it difficult to use all the forks on the table. They finish the meal, but Vincent and Alina still don't understand what is happening. Even if Vincent doesn't know what the knight's path is, he still feels there is no way the Ogent family will do this kind of goodwill to a woodsman family. He feels the need to properly clarify issues, so he decides to talk. He appreciates Biscoff for his kind gestures, but also says he is worried and he can't believe that Ryan would swear loyalty to Cheyenne. Biscoff also admits that it is tad unpleasant, but the oath is absolute, and their family respects the policies of militarism. If they treat it just as unpleasant as it is because of the difference in status, it will result in dirtying Ryan's pride. So they have to use honorifics from that place, and Vincent doesn't have to feel uncomfortable, and the Ogent family won't hold back in supporting Cheyenne. Seeing the way Biscoff is handling the situation despite how unpleasant it is, Cheyenne feels Biscoff is an honorable person who really respects the way things are done. Biscoff says he heard Cheyenne is a spirit zone user, and a spirit zone isn't something that can be earned through hard work but something only talented people can earn. And he has also heard he wants to be a mage, and if Cheyenne wants to earn the unofficial license quickly, the Alphea's Magic Academy will be the best. He says he isn't saying that he must attend the academy to be a mage, but not doing so will taint their family's name, so he should go to a school that suits the family's standard. Vincent stands and screams that if his son attends the magic school, he will be a mage. He says everything is just like a dream. However, Biscoff says there is only one issue, which is the fact that the school can't admit students that aren't nobles, so the only solution is that they would like to adopt Cheyenne. They claim that was the only solution they could find during their meeting, and they have a cousin, Pedro, who has no child, and they can put Cheyenne as his child. They convince Vincent that they have no intention of stealing his son away from him and it will just be writing on paper. But with the paper, Cheyenne will become noble. Vincent feels that is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that he can't steal away from his son, but accepting it will steal their son. He asks Cheyenne what he should do and wonders if Cheyenne has made his decision beforehand. Cheyenne holds Vincent's hand and refuses the decision. He says that he is his father's son and he can't become another person's adoptive son. Rihanna tries to convince him that it is just on paper and that his real parents will remain his parents. He needs the adoption to be able to succeed, and Clump tells him that he will become a noble and attend the magic school. But Cheyenne refuses, saying that if he has to change his parent to attend the magic school, then he will not go to the magic school. They remind him that he wouldn't become a mage, but he says he will not become a mage. Clump gets angry. He asks him why he is so inflexible and tells him the world isn't easy. He tells him there are things he needs to give up to succeed, and if he can't give them up, then his dreams aren't important. Then Cheyenne says if that is the case, then his dream isn't important. He says his dream is something he had received from his parents. They are the roots, and he can only receive nutrients from them. From the books they bought him to taking him to the city. Those were the roots of the dream. He appreciates the agent for the offer but says his parents are the two people there alone. Clump wonders if he doesn't have a sense of guilt or ethics. However, contrary to what Cheyenne says, Vincent says they should take Cheyenne as their son. Clump reminds him of Cheyenne's words, and he reveals that Cheyenne isn't his biological son. His wife screams at him, asking him what he is trying to say and why he is revealing that in the agent's house. Vincent continues and tells them that he and his wife cannot bear a child, and Cheyenne was a child they gained through an accidental opportunity, and he is sure they can also tell that he is definitely from a noble family. He says that Cheyenne is too much for him, and if he gets adopted by a noble, then he will be going to his rightful place. Everyone in that room guesses as much as each other. Cheyenne definitely doesn't look like his parents. Biscoff, however, sees the issue as not just an outburst, but a declaration for forfeiting his son. Cheyenne screams his father's name, asking him what he is doing. He asks why Vincent will say something like that without discussing it with him first. But Vincent says that since he is all grown up, he needs to learn some of the issues. Cheyenne asks if he thinks he doesn't know. He says the only reason he didn't ask is that a person only has one real father and mother, and he also wishes to have just one father and mother. He asks if Vincent is trying to make him have 6 parents. Vincent explains that he doesn't want him to give up his dreams because of him. Cheyenne says he isn't trying to give up, and as long as he keeps trying, he will get another opportunity. He asks if Vincent has thought about how he will feel knowing that he is to be abandoned by his parents twice. Vincent regrets what he has done and tells Cheyenne it is his fault. In tears, he tells Cheyenne that he will never give up on him and he is his son forever. Biscoff learns that sometimes what a parent does for their son can cause the son pain, and Clump says that being a parent is very difficult. In tears, Biscoff asks his father if he didn't also suffer while trying to raise his children by himself. Biscoff says that he heard there are special considerations available at Alphea's Magic Academy, and Clump can do something about that. But Clump asks what he can do. He says there is no way he can beat the stubborn Alphea's Academy. Biscoff says that he heard Alphea's owes his father debts, but Clump says that for a guy who follows the principle to the core, being stubborn has to be the best method. Biscoff says his father used that stubborn method to push the responsibility of being the family head on him, but Clump says it's because Biscoff is ripe for it. 3 days later, and it's a few days until Ryan leaves for the Swordsmanship Academy. By the grace of the family head, Vincent and his wife are allowed to remain and spend time with their son. But his father still feels sorry for him. He is worried about how many years Vincent will be able to hold on for this time around. And for the first time, he and Ryan were allowed to have some free time. They slept in the same room, hugged each other, laughed together, and played together. 3 days later, Ryan leaves for the Swordsmanship Academy. Before leaving, he starts crying, and Cheyenne consoles him by saying that he shouldn't cry. He asks how he can not cry and says he knows that if he climbs in that carriage, he will have to go to the Swordsmanship Academy. It is a true goodbye. He asks why he can't enroll the next year, just like Cheyenne, but Cheyenne says they don't even know if he will be able to get through the special consideration or not. He says they will meet when they are on break, and they will write letters every day. Before leaving, he tells Cheyenne that he must become a mage and says he will always try to be the strongest knight, and by the sword that protects him. Just as he brags that he will be his sword, Rihanna hits his head. He tells him to focus and graduate first because she is more worried about him. She tells Cheyenne not to worry and spend time with his family for now because her grandfather will surely ensure he gets enrolled. Cheyenne bows to her and appreciates her for helping him out. She looks at him and says he is a peculiar child. She had felt he was just a cute little brother at first, but she now feels he is really a considerate child, and even his mentality of not bending his beliefs in that scary situation is enviable. She attempts to tell him that maybe when he graduates, they can date, but she immediately cautions herself, asking what she is thinking. She feels he is a child that will need to live in the new world that is the Magic Academy, so she tells him that he should do his best and she is sure he will become a mage. She tells him to take care of Ryan, and he enters the carriage to follow his parents too. As they leave, Ryan calls for him and tells him that when he gets into the Magic Academy, he should destroy everyone there. He hypes him up and tells him to do the same. The meeting of Ryan Ogent and Cheyenne Arian, two passionate young men, would be recorded as the starting incident that broke the structure of the world. At Althea's Magic Academy, Clumph meets with Alpheus and tells him what he wants, and after he says it, Alpheus stays quiet for some minutes. Clumph says that considering that Alpheus has been contemplating for about 30 minutes, he can expect a positive answer. However, Alpheus says that despite being his good friend for 50 years, he really can't accept such a request from him. However, Clumph gets angry, asking why Alpheus will deny him of such. He reminds Alpheus of how much he suffered because of him when they were young. But Alpheus says considering that Clumph is spitting empty self-praise out of his mouth, the matter must be an urgent one. He, however, says that the special consideration wasn't created to be a side entrance for nobles. They get many requests every year, but special consideration also has its own special requirements. Clumph calls Alpheus a mischievous old man because Alpheus made him stay 30 minutes without even thinking of considering his request. He tells Alpheus that his situation is a different one. Seeing how Clumph is interested in that issue, Alpheus realizes it's really an important matter because he hasn't seen that kind of expression in his friend in a long while. Clumph says he isn't asking Alpheus to accept a dumb kid, but the kid is rather the opposite. He says the boy is a friend of his youngest grandson and asks Alpheus if he knows what he felt the first day he met Cheyenne. He says when he first saw Cheyenne, he was looking at the younger version of Alpheus, but Alpheus says if the boy is really that talented, and he can enroll in the normal way, then he realizes that there is a problem with that, which is the fact that the boy isn't noble. Alpheus screams, "No way." He asks if it is the child with blonde hair and blue eyes, and he relates that to the young boy he also met some years ago. Clumph says that the first impression of Cheyenne he had was when Cheyenne told Ryan that even if he ended up losing his life, he doesn't regret being Ryan's friend, and the first thing he thought of upon hearing that statement was that the child could talk well. He thought he was one clever child who could move the hearts of adults with his words. But when the idea of adoption was proposed, and the boy asked if they were asking him to deny his roots, and said doing that would be no different from saying he should dry up and die, Clumph laughs at the statement, wondering if the statement makes any sense at all because he can't expect that someone would refuse to be an aristocrat. But Alpheus says the boy understands the causation of nature because there is no cause without any effect. Clumph says that many get lost without knowing that logic. Indeed, new opportunities come anytime. However, the moment a person denies his cause, the foundation that builds the person gets scattered, and he will lose everything he has. Clumph says the idea that a person shouldn't compromise on what he has reminds him of Alpheus when they were so much younger. Alpheus admits that not compromising means while you embrace everyone with righteousness, then you can rain down judgment. But he also says he thinks that is too dangerous. Upon hearing that, Clumph asks Alpheus if he is still unable to forgive himself. He says Alpheus has done enough and has nurtured countless talents, so it is about time Alpheus forgives himself. However, Alpheus is of the opinion that forgiving oneself is being arrogant. He says the reason why he teaches children is so nobody grows up to be like him. He says since Cheyenne is so similar to him, who can guarantee that he won't work on the same horrific path that Alpheus did? On the other hand, Clumph argues that Alpheus was a genius that appears once on a blue moon. But the House of Mirror's light only took a wrong path once and almost put an end to everything, but in the long run, Alpheus got back on track in the end. He jokingly says that although nobody knew Alpheus would become an old wrinkly headmaster in the countryside, Alpheus insults him back, saying that he should be grateful that heaven did him a favor and for a talentless idiot like him to become a certified grade 3 swordsman. Then he is worried about the future of the kingdom. They laugh about this, and Alpheus accepts that there is no effect without a cause. Clumph asks if it is fate, and says that Alpheus is familiar with it, too, because the boy he sent away behind the wall about 4 years ago is back to him in that manner. Although Alpheus says he doesn't believe in fate but admits that for a talent which was lost because of his status to appear once again in front of him after 4 years, it may really be fate, and he will admit Cheyenne into the academy. 3 months later, in spring, Cheyenne leaves home and wishes his parents goodbye. The young boy is now at the age of 17, and his mother hugs him because she will miss him so much. He promises them that he will write letters to them often. But before leaving, he wonders if his short hair is okay and if he won't be weird. But his mother reassures him that Rihanna has said short hair is really a trend among nobles. Vincent tries to kiss him before leaving, but he refuses, saying he is now 17. Vincent forcefully gives him a forehead kiss and tells him he is proud of him. Before leaving, Vincent asks if it is okay that the family head said he would provide a house for them in the city, but asks if Cheyenne forgot he is a hunter and a hunter's roots are mountains and the plains, and he has tried to reject the house Biscoff has provided them with, but no matter how many times he refuses it, they are adamant. Although Cheyenne's admission to the Magic Academy was worth a town's celebration, Vincent didn't make it known to anybody in the town. And Cheyenne is also sure the reason Vincent is refusing to live in the city is so he wouldn't trouble Cheyenne. Timurin tells Cheyenne to climb the carriage as he will accompany him to the academy. Cheyenne greets his parents again, and that day begins his first journey as a student in the Magic Academy. He feels awkward staying with Timurin in the carriage, and when they arrive at the academy, Timurin tells him they have arrived. He tells him that the tuition, along with the cost of other materials, will be paid by him, and all he needs to do is to study hard. Cheyenne appreciates Timurin, but Timurin says he is only doing his job. Cheyenne says he just realized that he hadn't thanked Timurin properly. He says it is thanks to Timurin's support that he is able to enroll on the academy, and he will never forget that favor. Timurin tells him that no matter how high a commoner flies, he is still a commoner, and they can never go beyond nobles. But not just anyone can grasp an opportunity like that, and when Cheyenne enters the academy, countless nobles will not like him. But he should bear with everything and endure it, because if he can endure it till the end, then it will eventually come to an end. He reassures Timurin that he will definitely become a mage, and they start entering the academy. Timurin tells him he has to register for the academy. The Alpheus Academy is a place called the Cradle of Geniuses. Cheyenne wonders what he will learn there and the set of people he will meet there. He sees all the maids and servants who echo that they will do their best to serve the student. After the registration, Timurin attempts to leave and tells Cheyenne that he should contact him if he needs anything. After Timurin leaves, Cheyenne wonders who is coming to pick him up and says while he waits, he should just look around. He knows the Alpheus Magic Academy runs using a system called the Class 10. There are a total of 420 students in the school, and among them are 30 students in the advanced class. Every year, the number of students that graduate is only 10. As he looks around, someone speaks to him and says he must be Cheyenne. He turns and sees it as Alpheus, the headmaster. Alpheus tells him he thinks they have met before and asks if Cheyenne still recognizes him. Cheyenne says yes, and appreciates Alpheus for the time he gave him when they first met. But Alpheus says they will get to those talks later, and should go for a walk. He tells Cheyenne that he has to take the entrance exam, but Cheyenne says he doesn't know anything. But Alpheus says he doesn't have to worry and it is just an exam that will place him in a class. He asks Cheyenne if he can enter the spirit zone, and Cheyenne says he can. Alpheus feels it is amazing that Cheyenne can enter the spirit zone on his own and feels it could have been nice for him to train Cheyenne from a young age. But back then, he didn't notice the jewel in front of him. He decides that even if it is late, he should start by teaching Cheyenne from the beginning. Since the test site will mostly have kids around the age of 10, going to the test site early will hurt Cheyenne, so he suggests that they should take a look around the academy first. As they walk, Cheyenne feels something weird and tells Alpheus, who tells him that classrooms are where students take their classes, and they have classes from 10-8. The beginner class is class 10-8, and Cheyenne sees the students floating in the air. He realizes that everyone in the class uses magic, and Alpheus tells him the class they are going to now is a bit different, which is the intermediate class of class 7-4. Seeing the students, Cheyenne feels a little different, and he feels it's because they are around his age. He wonders what the students are talking about. He overhears the conversation they are having, but he can just scream. He can hear that they are speaking the same language as him, but he can't understand the language they are speaking. When they enter the class, an explosion occurs, and it was caused by a female student. The student says she was performing the sound amplification experiment, but there must have been an error in the output circuit. Cheyenne sees that the other students don't care about the explosion. Alpheus tells the girl how she could have done it better, and she appreciates him. She says she will try again, which makes Cheyenne wonder why no one is trying to prevent an injury. He says it is as if he is in a different world entirely. As he walks along with Alpheus, he sees a signboard that seems like the notice board. He checks nearer, and he sees that it is the grade ranking of the entire intermediate class. The class has 42 people, and the first person in the class is Amy Carmes, the same girl he met with red hair 4 years ago in the city. He sees that she is in first place in the class and figures with the family name that she is a first-class noble. He sees that everyone whose name is on that list has incredible talents just like he has, but to think it is Amy that ranks first among all of them. He decides to challenge her, not because he wants to be like her but because he wants to try it and make it to the first class in the entire class. However, he knows he will start styling from the very beginning again, which is right in the last place. But he really wants to challenge the ranking. He hears some students at his back calling Amy and saying they should go together. At this point, he doesn't recognize her at all, and upon hearing that name, he wonders if they are indeed talking about Amy Carmes, the rank 1 in the intermediate class. He turns, and he sees her right behind him with her book. He immediately recognizes her as the girl with red hair. He recalls everything that had happened that day, including how she asked him where he learned to use magic and her words asking him how a commoner could learn magic. The student calling out for her calls her a jerk and says they should go, but she refuses to answer and keeps walking. Cheyenne hoped that Amy didn't see him. Amy's friend catches up and asks if she saw the guy they just walked by. She tells Amy that the guy looks so gorgeous. She wonders if he is a new student but says he looks too old to be a new student, so she assumes he must be a transfer student. She asks Amy what she thinks, and Amy also says that he is peculiar. She feels she has seen him before, although she can't figure out exactly where she has seen him before. Her friend asks her if she has an interest in Cheyenne, and she says that she has never had an interest in a guy before. She replies that she doesn't have feelings for him, but she just feels he looks really familiar, although she can't figure out where she got to know him from. Her friend insists that she is lying and that she fell for the boy at first sight. They start arguing about it because she refuses to admit she is in love. Amy Karam is the most popular girl in the intermediate class. She has been shutting down confessions from her seniors, juniors, and classmates, and she is a model student among other model students. But the only person who knows her dark past is trying to be admitted to that same school with her. Cheyenne continues his tour with Alpheus, who asks him if he feels the school is chilly. He replies with a no, and since the new students should have almost been done with their tests, they go to the Magic Academy third test site. When they get there, Alpheus sees that they haven't finished the test yet. There are still several students sitting for their tests, and Alpheus says it is a good idea and Cheyenne should watch closely at what the child is doing so he can also learn how to do his own. He tells Cheyenne that when a person enters the spirit zone, he will feel that the letters on the floor are different, and how he feels about them will help the teachers interpret the spirit zone's size, strength, flexibility, and disposition. He tells Cheyenne that he just needs to answer the teacher's question honestly. Cheyenne understands what he says, and he also feels the entire process is interesting. The instructors ask the child having his test if he can use magic. The boy says yes and says he can levitate objects in the air. The instructor encourages him that it is adorable. So he tells the boy, Kami, to try entering the spirit zone. Kami enters the spirit zone, and the teacher asks him what is the number further away. Kami says it is 6, and Alpheus tells Cheyenne that the number 6 means that the zone's diameter is 6 meters. The instructor asks Kami what his color he feels most strongly about, and Kami says red. He claims he came into a red world. That means he is a divergent type. The divergent type is like light and fire. It shows the person has a disposition for a high amount of activity. Alpheus says a divergent type makes sense, showing that the boy's zone is a bit big for his age. The next teacher asks Kami if he sees a giant tower, and Kami says the tower is by his side. The next teacher asks what temperature he feels, which is his density, and the boy says he feels a bit hot and he is sweating a bit. They tell him he has done good work and he should leave. The teacher comments that the students they have admitted that year are impressive. They say there is a student, Mike, whose zone size was about 12 meters, and he thinks the quality of students they get every year improves. They leave a comment on Kami's test that his use of zone is great, but his endurance is slightly behind. The next student is Cheyenne, and before he goes there, Alpheus advises him not to get overwhelmed, and that he should just show off his skills. He goes there, deciding to give it his best. When he gets there for the test, the teachers notice he is the students going through the special screening that the principal had told them about. One of them says he is a peculiar choice and he is quite too old. They also see that he borrowed the house in Ojin's name and wonder if his family isn't that famous. One of them feels it is like he discovers his talent a bit late, and he may seem special on the outside, but in that school, he will only end up being buried quickly. They ask him if he could use magic, and he says no. He says he didn't learn anything about magic. The teacher is shocked. He assumed that even if Cheyenne didn't learn anything, he could do some things. Alpheus knows that is what the teacher may think, but he also knows that magic is the act of bringing out the knowledge of the mind. Noble children are taught various things, and they end up using magic naturally, so it is normal that Cheyenne has no knowledge. They ask him to enter the circle and enter his spirit zone. They ask if he can do that, and he says he will try. He enters the spirit zone, and he is shocked that the zone is like that. The teacher asks him to mention the number that is farthest away, but he didn't say anything. The teacher assumes that he is embarrassed. Alpheus tells Cheyenne that he just has to answer honestly, which is no problem. He tells him they aren't ranking him against anything, and they are just trying to find the best way to educate him. Cheyenne tells them that he can see a number, but it is so long that he can't really read it. They tell him it isn't based on what he can read but on what he can feel. He explains that it is so long, and he can feel it, but he can't read it, and even at that moment, it keeps growing. Upon realizing that, the teacher asks him to start with the first digit he can see. He tells them he can see 3.14, but the teachers don't understand him. They tell him there is no 3.14 among the numbers and ask if he is certain. He tells them that is what he sees, and they admit that there are few cases where the pi ratio shows up, and that means the zone size has exceeded the range that they set it for. They wonder if Cheyenne has exceeded 30 meters, so they ask him what color he feels strongest for, and he says it is blue, and everywhere is washed in blue. That is the convergent type, and it means his zone is high. It means his endurance is better than the size of his zone. Alpheus realizes why Clumph was adamant about Cheyenne. He says that Cheyenne's level of talent isn't of a decent level. The teachers ask Cheyenne what is the number of spheres floating around him. He feels the things floating and says it's 867. All the teachers scream. Even Alpheus admits his talent is a bit dangerous. The next teacher asks him how cold he is feeling at the moment. He says that he feels a bit cold and, in fact, very icy. The teacher says it is as expected, considering the power of his spirit zone. The teachers comment that he is of the convergent type with outstanding durability, and even so, the size of his spirit zone is abnormally large. After the test, the teacher tells him he has done a great job, but now they have to have a meeting to decide which class he will be in. They ask all the new students to wait outside. Cheyenne walks with the other kids, and he closes the door. The teachers say that he is an interesting student, and they don't know how a 17-year-old student can have a spirit zone with a diameter of over 30 meters. They also say the density of the spirit zone decreases with the spirit zone size, but the density of Cheyenne's spirit zone is still 86.7, and on top of that, it is pure concentration without using any intensification skills. They ask themselves if Cheyenne is some monk who continuously trained in the woods or something. One of them asks if it is possible that Cheyenne had lied about the spirit zone, and when they try to have a better thought of it, having a spirit zone with a density of 90% and is still 30 meters is weird, especially because it is from a 17-year-old boy who doesn't know magic. They claim it doesn't make sense, and isn't there a chance that Cheyenne could have increased the number before telling them? However, one of the teachers reminds the one complaining that it seems like he has forgotten that there is no reason for students to lie. If they get into high-ranking classes by lying, then they won't be able to follow the classes, let alone take tests. So why on earth would a student cliff like that when they have come to school to actually learn? More than that, she asks them if they have forgotten that the pi is displayed as an error code, which isn't something a mere student could say just to get some attention. Alpheus interferes and asks them where is a good place to put Cheyenne. They didn't know that Alpheus had been around them for a while now. One of the teacher, Sina Oliver, suggests that since Class 6 studies the development of the Spirit Zone and its theory and Class 5 start learning real magic, then she thinks Cheyenne's Spirit Zone is almost complete, and following that, she is recommending that they put him in Class 5. Another teacher, Thad, opposes her. He claims that Cheyenne is a boy who has no knowledge of magic. Thad believes it might cause problems and get conceited after being kept in a high-ranking class, so they should put him in the basic class where he can learn the basics of magic. Sina tells him that although he may be right but not all students are like Thad. She says that if Thad is being honest, he just wants to put Cheyenne in Class 5 since that is the class he manages, and he wants a master student. They both start an argument as Thad says he doesn't see any problem in wanting to teach a student with talent. Another teacher interferes that Thad has a point and that even if Cheyenne has great talent, He is still a young student, so he asks if they teach him step by step from class 10. He claims Shiren may lose his motivation to learn if they send him to the basic class since his age group won't match. So she asks if they can defer his allocation of class and just keep an eye on him because she thinks class 7 will be the most appropriate for him. She agrees that class 7 is a high-ranking class that also includes the basic lessons regarding spirit zones. And if Shiren has talents beyond that, then grade skipping will also be an option for him. Alpheus tells her words are correct. He declares that Shiren will be allocated to class 7. Naturally, magic schools have a system with 10 classes. Depending on the evaluation, students are split into classes of 10 different levels. But these classes can be categorized into 3 groups. Classes 10 to 8 are elementary level, and those students are educated with the focus being on developing spirit zone. Classes 7 to 4 are high-ranking classes where students learn proper knowledge for using magic and how to use their spirit zones. Finally, the graduating class, which is made up of classes 1 to 3, face severe training to produce professional mages. Eventually, Shiren resumes to class 7. That day, the teacher tells the students that they have a new student joining them. They wonder why a new student got placed in an intermediate class as soon as he enrolls, and they say he is old. But they admit that he is good-looking. He introduces himself to them and hopes that they all get along. Finally, he has achieved his aim and has come to the magic school. The Alpheus Magic School has the whole 75.425 kilometers mountain it includes and possess more than 33 buildings and 40 training centers. Though going out is prohibited on days other than weekends, that is not inconvenient since most facilities are all in place within the school. Classes there end at 5. And any time after that is free time, but students go to the school library, which is open 24 hours or form research associations with other students with similar interests to learn. All of this is the driving force behind making a prestigious school. As expected, the classes are difficult for Shiren and the subjects are high-level knowledge, but it is a given since even nobles who have been studying magic since they were young are also having hard times with the classes. He decides that by any means possible, he can follow the core of knowledge, according to the chronological order of history that has been engraved on him. All the knowledge of that school starts to gradually accumulate. He attends a morning class, and after the class, he sits to wait for his afternoon class, which is a spirit zone practical class, but he sees there is no location written on the schedule. He wonders if he should ask any of the students, and if he should, who should he ask? He sees someone around his age in the class. He asks her if she knows which practical training center they must visit for the afternoon class. She turns and asks if he is talking to her. He notices that she is a very shy student, and she tells him that the practice they have that day is at the second combined training center. He asks her what is combined, and she tells him that all the intermediate students train together twice in a week, and that day is the orientation. He goes to the combined intermediate class, and he meets several other students there. All the students in his class call Amy Senior, and they all try to greet her even though she doesn't respond to them. Seeing how she is known around, he sees that she is popular. He feels she is someone he doesn't want to ever come in contact with in that school, if possible. Unfortunately, there are 2 combined training every week, but he reassures himself that she is the first in the intermediate class and she will move to the graduating class soon. The seniors and juniors in that school have strict orders, so he wonders if he can stay out of sight. The intermediate class spirit zone specialist, Ethela Romy, welcomes them to the class. She was also their teacher the year before but says that there must have been students who have moved up a class. But although it seems her class is filled with familiar faces, she can see there is a new face. Everyone wonders if it is really true that there is a new student. Shiren is uncomfortable with the turn of things, and unfortunately, the teacher asks him to stand and greet his colleagues. He stands up and introduces himself, and all the students are shocked. Amy's friend asks her if that isn't the same boy they saw the day before. Amy discovers his name is Shiren, but that name doesn't sound familiar to her, so she wonders who he is. She insists that he is familiar, and one of the junior students tells them that according to what she heard from the teachers, Shiren is really brilliant. The girl says Shiren did so well on his test, and Amy keeps wondering which family young master is Shiren. She eventually uses her red eyes to recall all the faces she has seen, and she remembers where she met Shiren before. Upon finding out, she gets very terrified. The Karmis family is known for being esteemed with a genus bloodline. Their eyes are a unique ability that is passed down through their family. It is also an ability that is known for being able to recognize one's condition perfectly, which makes studying meaningless. The youngest daughter of the family who has the most talent of them all, Amy, indeed got the genius lineage of the Carmies passed down to her. However, she hated everything about her family. The fact that she could learn everything when she sees it at once makes everything so boring to her. She would stop playing games and even ask herself what the family has done for her. She always questions what the ability has done for their family and assumes that she can do what she wants in life without her family's name. She met the gang who had harassed Cheyenne with that mindset. And after a few days of doing the same thing with them, she admits that everything is boring and she remains with them, causing issues every time. However, the one who eventually sent the rebellious Amy back home is no other person than the boy of a low class, and that boy is standing in front of her in class at that moment. Her friend sees the way she is looking. She calls her attention to know what is wrong with her. She lies to them that she only says the F word because her shoes are uncomfortable, especially because the word and the word shoe sound similar in Korean. She knows that the memory she captured with her red eyes couldn't have been wrong. She has another problem, which is the fact that she found the commoner whom she encountered that day as a child among nobles. She never knew that the low-class boy could be there in the magic academy with her. She becomes very embarrassed of her past, and she wishes to die immediately. She tidied up her past without leaving a single loose end, and she really hopes that Cheyenne wouldn't remember her too. She recalls that about 5 years ago, she was about to sell Cheyenne as a slave, and that was when they had brushed past each other. She images that he will call the students together and tell them that Amy isn't the type of person they all think she is. He will tell them that she was once hanging out with gangsters in the alley about 5 years ago, and even brag that there is no way he would be lying when he is the person the professors trust. She imagines that he will tell the students that although Amy is the Magic Academy Ice Princess, and the reason she refuses all the boys at school is that she is interested in men, and he will even lie that she took off his clothes. She tries to take off that thinking. She promises herself that she wouldn't allow that kind of misunderstanding. She promises herself that she must stop something like that from happening to her. Cheyenne also feels she might have recognized her, and he also feels uncomfortable. Othello starts the class by asking her students what is a spirit zone. A student replies her that it is the mage's mentality, and she admits that it is the embodiment of the mage's mentality. The first form of it is a circle, and that is the focus. However, in actual combat, there are certain circumstances where the circle form is not efficient. She decides to show it to them in the image zone. As she enters the image zone, all the students see the spirit zone with their eyes, including Cheyenne. Othello tells them that the image they are seeing is the basic form of the spirit zone, and it's the circle form, but it is rare in real combat. So she proceeds to show them an example of the view in real combat. She proceeds to shoot magic towards her target. She explains that her spirit zone is 10 meters in diameter while her target is 20 meters away, so she will have the 10th circle magic fireball. Cheyenne is excited that he can now see someone use magic. She brings out a small fire and throws it at her target. As she does that, the fireball disappears. She teaches them that most magic can't leave the spirit zone because mages can only control magic within the spirit zone. Thus, if she extends her spirit zone until it reaches the target, then she can reach her target. All the students scream wow. Cheyenne is also glad to learn new things because he didn't know it was possible to change the form of a person's mentality. However, Othello tells them there is a fatal problem with the method, and changing the form of their zone consumes a lot of their concentration. It will be inefficient to change her form in every match where she needs to use the zone. And that is why Spirit Zone is used in 4 different patterns. She teaches them the 4 forms of Spirit Zone: the defense form, the attack form, the cross form, and the detached form. She explains that the first form, which is the defense form, is the basic deltahedron shape. In most defenses, the Spirit Zone is maintained not to be broken, and the more faces it has, the higher the defense. The next is the star-shaped form, which is called the attack form. It is ready to locate the target with the attack form, which is useful when fighting against many enemies. From the attack form, it is the cross form, which allows the zone to extend in 4 different distant directions. However, for fast-moving targets, that form isn't suitable. She tells them they can say that the main idea of the cross form is to increase the speed of the Spirit Zone's rotation. The students get tense because their teacher uses the techniques without even blinking her eyes, and they wonder if she wants them to do the same. Contrary to how the other students feel, Cheyenne understands everything Othello is reaching them. He writes in his book that with the cross method, he can use it in a real battle, even if his diameter is just 10 meters. Othello moves to the final form, which is the detached form. She tells them it is a form that is difficult to get right even if they are in class 5. She proceeds to show them the demonstration. A student from behind Cheyenne asks that if Athela succeeds, will she get promoted? She says her spirit zone achieved full marks when she was in class 8, and so to do the last technique, her spirit zone has to leave her body. Indeed, the students see Athela's spirit zone leaving her body. Cheyenne is confused. He doesn't get what is happening again, because if the spirit zone is a mage's mentality, then is it possible to detach a person's thoughts from his body? He sees something weird at the center of the spirit zone and wonders what it is. Athela explains that the detached form is so difficult that it is for specialized mages. However, as a mage doesn't have a center point, the spirit zone cannot move, but they can move the zone to the target, and then instantly activates it and chase it. It also has the advantage of having an infinite scope of activity. Instant activation means that they can ignore the process of trying to aim at the target, and they can activate their magic on the target itself. The students are wowed. They wonder how Athela can do that easily, since they all know that just using the spirit zone isn't easy. Well, they conclude that Athela is on a different level than them, and she is an official class 6 mage. Cheyenne sees that despite how small Athela looks, she is really so skilled. She tells them that if they don't do a demonstration in the first class, she is sure they will be upset. She tells them that the first student who got first place in speed for the cross form is Amy, and she should come to show them a demonstration as the student representative. The junior students cheer Amy up. Her friend says that, as expected, she was the first again, and all the male students will fall for her after seeing her once. On the other hand, Amy is sweating. She doesn't want that kind of attention at that moment. Since she has no other choice, she goes for the demonstration. She teaches the students that one of the spirit zone's 4 forms is the target form, and its advantage is its long range. However, it is weak against fast mining targets and multiple targets, but if it can be supported by someone with complete focus and good control over their spirit zone at high speed, then the weakness shall disappear as it becomes an impenetrable fortress against distant foes. All the students watch her, and they say that she is incredible. They say that people who take speed gun tests change between 4 forms, but Amy is always first, even though she only uses the target form. Some hope they will be privileged enough to become a mage like her. Even Cheyenne, who is an amateur in magic, can tell that Amy has applied a very impressive technique, because not only is she rotating the spirit zone while being stationary, but she is also sweeping through everything that the zone passes by. She is really hitting everything in one go, and yet her expression shows she still has a lot of talents on her sleeve. He can feel elegance emanating from her movement, and he concludes that she is wonderful. Another student beside him says that if he could date a senior like Amy, then his entire school life would be a whole lot different. But a girl tells him that Amy doesn't care for any guy, no matter the guy's household background. Cheyenne listens to that conversation and realizes the reason all the male students see crazy for her. Not only is she a first-class noble, but she also doesn't lack anything. She is such an incredible person, so he wonders why she was hanging out around those delinquents. Amy finished her demonstration and passed with 20 seconds. All the students applaud her, but she is more interested in Cheyenne, so she looks at him, and they exchange eye contact. Other students notice this. They see that she just looked at the new student. She is also angry at herself that she took a lot at him without thinking. She feels she can't help herself because the situation she is in is so irritating. With that, they both confirm that they recognize each other, and the students also ask themselves if it is possible that they know each other. Amy is bothered that if Cheyenne spreads rumors about her past, it will become troublesome for her, so she wonders if she needs to shut him up. She tries to caution herself, reminding herself that she is the school's best model student, and also the top scorer, and even if Cheyenne says something about her, there is no reason the other students will believe him. She feels she may make things more awkward if she makes a move. As she returns to her seat, her friend asks her if something happened to her in the image zone and tells her her face is red. After the demonstration, practice time is divided by class. The fella tells them the members of Class 7 are practicing the defense form and tells them it is best to perfect at least the defense form, since mages need to be able to sustain their focus to stay alive on a chaotic battlefield. Cheyenne tries to practice it, and after his first attempt, he wonders if he actually succeeded in doing it. Unfortunately, since he can't visualize it, he can't confirm if he got it or not. He feels it would be easier for him if he could see his spirit zone on the image zone. He goes to meet Athela and asks her if he can use the image zone. She tells him that his seniors are supposed to use the image zone first. He feels there is no need to be conscious of others when using magic since opportunities to improve one's skills don't always appear. Othello tells him that it seems there is no one using the image zone at the moment, and it isn't a bad experience to try it ahead of his time, so he should use it. The students look at him as he goes to the image zone. Some of them say it is adorable for a new student to want to try that, and Amy's friend calls her attention and tells her to look at Cheyenne. As she hears that, her drink pours from her mouth. She wonders what Cheyenne is doing and asks what could a mere Class 7 student do. Her friend notices that there is something weird about Amy. She tells her that she has been acting weird and asks why. All the students gather to watch as Cheyenne is more excited that he is eventually getting the opportunity to meet his spirit zone. When he visualizes it, everyone is shocked at the size of his spirit zone. The sizes keep increasing on the image zone, and Cheyenne thinks about his spirit zone and recalls that they didn't tell him the size during the tests, and Alpheus even told him that he couldn't measure it. He wonders how much bigger his zone will get, and he eventually commands that his spirit zone should stop increasing. His senior students are shocked. They wonder if he is really a Class 7 student and says that the average diameter of a Class 7 student shouldn't be more than 13 meters. Some wonder if he swells it on purpose, and some correct themselves that if he did that, the density would get lowered to the point that it would look like an air bubble. Cheyenne is glad he could stop it from growing and says it makes it look like he is trying to get attention. He tries to do the defense form, but he doesn't understand why the spirit zone is acting weirdly. The frame of his zone isn't being raised, instead, it is collapsing. But when he was trying to practice, everything was fine. And he says there is no way that things would work out perfectly during a first practice session. Cheyenne wonders what has gone wrong and if he has gotten scared due to the visual effect of the spirit zone. But he is sure his focus can't get shaken by something like that. He wonders what is the difference between outside the image zone and inside of it because something has to be the cause. He eventually gets it. He figures he was mistaken because Othello demonstrated it comfortably. He recalls that if they make changes to their spirit zone, they will use up their focus, which means that because he intentionally made his spirit zone smaller, it has used up his focus. He decides that if the issue is because he made his spirit zone smaller, then he just has to make it its usual size. The spirit zone gets bigger and bigger. It continues till it is about 47 meters in diameter. The students wonder which kind of student has that big a spirit zone. After he puts his spirit zone in its size, he folds it at the same time to get the form. He achieves it. Everyone in the class is in awe that a new student succeeded in forming his first form on the first day. He is also proud of himself because it seems like he is inside a jewel. Othello also declares that it is very impressive that Cheyenne got that on his first day. Amy's friend is also excited and asks Amy what she thinks. At that moment, Amy recalls that Cheyenne was the cause of the root of her humiliation. Seeing how Cheyenne could make it to the Magic Academy, he definitely has a supporter. She feels he would be able to flip the difference in class soon enough, and his influence will grow bigger. She decides that she can't keep quiet and watch him, and she has to approach him secretly. What do you think Amy will do? Does it seem like Amy and Cheyenne will make good friends? The question that lingers in my mind throughout this manhwa is what is that secret, or that bad thing, that Alpheus has done in the past that is hunting him until now? Does it relate to Cheyenne?